Orange County seniors, are you looking for something new and exciting to do? Would you like to make some great new friends? Well, here's how you can do both.
I'll call the March 10th, 2015 study session of the Newport Beach City Council to order. May we have the roll call, please?
The record will reflect that Councilmember Piotr is currently absent. Councilmember Muldoon is here.
Okay. First item of business is a clarification of items on the consent calendar. Councilmember Petros.
Just a couple of quick ones. On item number 9, the cooperative study or the cooperative agreement for the OCTA signal synchronization program, we're transferring monies out of bike lane projects. And I'm wondering why that is, and would those monies not be better spent on bicycle facilities if they remain there? That would be the first, and then I've got one other comment on an item.
Yes, thank you. I think basically that's some residual money in that account, and we're using that to fund the Bristol Street side. So it was money. I don't remember if it's general fund or other funds that were programmed for that project, which is done now.
But are there not other bicycle projects that will there be any bicycle projects that will suffer a lack of funding by virtue of this?
I don't believe so. If you look at the one coming up, actually tonight you have an award. Part of that's general fund, part of that's the bicycle fund you set up. And there's not enough bicycle fund money left to do it, so we're using general fund to supplement that. So you'll start using other funds, and this is just part of that.
Okay. And then, Mr. Mayor, just some brief comments on item number 8. We are looking at some bike lane improvements. These are not simple striping of bike lanes, but actually providing buffered area consistent with the notion of a bicycle track. This does comply with the new 3-foot rule. I want to point out that we have been keeping bicycle statistics since the creation of the Bicycle Master Plan Committee. And year over year, between 2013 and 2014, where we've got total year statistics, bicycle-involved collisions have been reduced 16% in the city, down below 100. Injuries from bicycle collisions over the last year, down 22%. Over that time. We have continued to see the interference and interruption of bicycle traffic been reduced. We have seen safety improved in this city for cyclists, for pedestrians, and for motorists by virtue of the good works that the Bicycle Master Plan Oversight Committee did, and our public works staff is doing in implementing those projects. So one, I want to just commend the staff and the city for moving forward with number 8, and can just show that by virtue of our commitment to bicycle improvements, we do see real measurable safety improvements in the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Dixon.
No, I have no comments.
Councilmember Muldoon.
None.
Councilmember Duffy.
I have none.
Councilmember Curry. And I have none either.
Mr. Mayor, just as a clarification to the council on item 13 tonight, that has to do with the Balboa Village facade program. We're going to be asking that that be continued for 2 weeks to relook at the way the funding is set up. So with that, your consent, we would ask that when at 7 o'clock tonight, that be a continuance for 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to study session item number 2. It's the update on ABC licenses, crime trends, and options for the peninsula. And I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor Thank you, Mayor Selich. I've asked for this study session to let the entire council hear what I have been hearing for a long time about the situation on the peninsula regarding alcohol serving establishments from residents, from the police, and from the operators of those establishments. Since this study session was first scheduled, I have had a town hall meeting that attracted many affected residents and business people. I have also met separately with interested residents, with police officials, and with business owners. I have participated in a ride-along with the police until 3 a.m. on a Saturday night. I have 2 more all-night visits scheduled later this month and in early April. There has been a lot of good discussion already. I hope that tonight we can continue this good discussion in which all sides are respectfully heard and the issues are discussed soberly, yes, soberly, and with an eye toward solutions. I say solutions plural because I think there really is a problem here and there are a range of possible solutions and perhaps others that we have not yet considered. I know this subject has been debated in years past. I know the hallowed history of pub crawling on the peninsula, and I know that some of these businesses have been here a very long time. Nevertheless, I believe many people agree that there are too many nighttime alcohol-related nuisance incidents and problems involving property crime and a long list of alcohol-related incidents on the peninsula. I am convinced that we can and should be able to find solutions together. It truly takes a village. I want to thank Chief Johnson and the city staff who will be presenting tonight for their thoughtful perspectives, historical insights, and gathering of the facts. I want to thank very much the residents, members of the business community, and the wider peninsula community who have come out this afternoon to share their perspectives and ideas. I hope that together we could come up with a way forward that everyone gets behind and that provides some measurable progress for our community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think our first presenter is going to be Chief Johnson.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. I'm going to go through a number of stats with you. First of all, we slice data every which way you can think of at the police department. You know, and there's an old saying, there's stats, oh, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. There's lies, there's big lies, and then there's statistics. So when I put together these statistics, I tried my best to be as fair about this and as unbiased. And I think I share the same philosophies as as Mayor Pro Tem Dixon. That is, I am very pro-business and I'm very pro-community. And so the issue is when there's a conflict between the two, it's our job to find go forward with some solutions. I know that Mayor Pro Tem Dixon has, as well as some of the community members. Some of this information, some of you have seen before. By the way, for those viewers at home, I'm Jay Johnson. I'm the police chief. I talked about this at the town hall meeting that Mayor Pro Tem Dixon held a couple weeks ago. So some of these statistics you will be a repeat. But I want to start by showing you this slide of the city divided into 4 areas. And I show you this because I'm going to refer back to the different areas in my statistics. This is basically the 4 areas of the city that we divide up for policing purposes. Nothing else but policing purposes. These don't have anything to do with council districts or anything else. These are the 4 areas for the policing purposes. And you'll see in there RDs. Those are reporting districts. So those are smaller areas that we use for collecting crime data. Now, first of all, the reason why this is broke up the 4 areas, and you'll notice at Area 1, you can see the numbers there yourself for population compared to Area 4. But the geographical size, Area 4 is about 52% of the city's geographical area. Area 1 is about 6% of the city's geographical area. And the reason why Area 1 is so much smaller is because we divide these areas up into policing areas that are somewhat equitable. In other words, Area 1 is much more busy when it comes to police services. There's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of visitors that come down to the peninsula, whether it's for the beach activity during the day or for the nightclub and the ABC license activity and entertainment during the nighttime. We have a lot of folks down there, which increases our calls for service, our crime, our workload, our response times, those kinds of things. So that's why we split up this way. That's why it's already a smaller geographical area for policing purposes. And geographics have to do with that as well and how we get around. So when I refer to Area 1, that's the peninsula. And you can see the other 3 areas there as well. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the alcohol or the ABC licenses in the peninsula. And I'll let you kind of marinate on this for a moment and read through that. I won't read these slides to you. But it gives you an idea of the concentration of ABC licenses in the peninsula. Now, a couple of clarifications I'll bring out that were brought up in the town hall meeting. One is there's a difference between ABC licenses and licensed establishments. And just for clarification, these are ABC licenses that I'm referring to here. So in the peninsula, I believe there's 117 ABC licenses, licensed to, I think, 100 establishments. So some establishments will have more than one license, like a catering license or something like that. So for apples to apples comparisons, we do all ABC licenses because I'm going to show you some comparisons to other cities throughout the state. The other issue that came up is, well, this isn't a very fair comparison. The peninsula, when you're talking about, one ABC license for 95 residents, there's a lot more than the 13,000 people, was it 13, 11,000, whatever the population was of Area 1. There's a lot more people in that area. And I'm with you on that argument, but it doesn't fly, unfortunately. And the reason why, it's the same thing every year when we put together our crime statistics. I complain all the time, and the feds don't care. But when we do our crime stats, our crime rate is our crime compared to our number of residents per 1,000 residents. And I argue that not only the peninsula, but throughout the city, we have tons of tourism that come here, whether it's the million people that come to our libraries or our fashion island or to the beaches, not only the peninsula, but down in CDM, to our many hotels that we have here. There's a lot of people that come to this city, not just the peninsula, yet that didn't help me when it comes to my crime stats. It's the number of crimes per residence. The same thing applies when you look at alcohol or ABC concentration levels and undue concentration. In the Business and Professions Code, it outlines very specifically how you calculate those up, and they're calculated basically on census data. And in the peninsula, I've done the whole peninsula here. The peninsula is actually broken down into 2 census tracts. And that's how ABC, per the Business and Professions Code, that's how they look at the data. So it doesn't matter about our tourism. It doesn't matter what that population, all that matters are census data when it comes to comparing licenses and undue concentration. So that's what we're doing here, whether we like it or not, that's the law, so that's what we're doing. So that gives you a look at kind of our comparisons, from the peninsula to the city, to the county, and to the state. In the next slide, we looked at all of the cities in the state, and these are all the cities with a population of 50,000 or more, and that's how we rank to all the cities in the state, a 50,000 or more population. Number 4. And that's not the peninsula, that's the whole city of Newport Beach, 189, one license per 189. So then we looked at beach cities. And then we added even less than 100,000 or less than 50,000 population, which added Laguna Beach, Hermosa Beach, and Seal Beach into this equation. And you can see where we fall there. Obviously, the comparison here is they also have a large influx. Some of these cities have a much larger influx than we do of tourism. I know for a fact, I'm looking down there at Long Beach, I know with a convention center and an arena, down by the water and their beaches and so forth. They have a dining and entertainment district. They pull in a lot more tourism than we do. That's just kind of a comparison because that came up in our town hall meeting. Some people wanted some other comparisons to cities similar with the tourism population as ours. Again, that doesn't matter. As far as ABC is concerned in the Business and Professions Code, it's per census. So here's some data. I try to make this simplified as easy as possible. Remember, Area 1, the blue area is the peninsula. So I looked at the arrests by area. This is the total arrests for the city. A little over 3,100 arrests this last year. 41% of those were in the peninsula. When we look at drunken public arrests, 68% of those in the peninsula. Alcohol-related citations, and these are not arrests, but just citations, again, 68% in the peninsula. This one is a little bit deceiving. It shows the total citations of 58. That is nowhere near the problem that we have with public urination. As I mentioned in the town hall meeting, for most misdemeanors, for us to arrest or cite for those, it has to be in the presence of a police officer. So these 58 represent 58 people that urinated in the presence of a police officer. There's a lot more than that going on out there. And quite frankly, we have to triage the issues that we have out there. And we see someone urinating in public versus someone who is, a fight. We're going to handle the fight, not the urinating in public. And because of the volume that we have down there, sometimes we just have to drive by this stuff. Matter of fact, we took out our new civilian investigator who's been working with us and Vice and ABC. Took her out Friday night, and she saw for herself, 3 or 4 people just urinating in people's front lawns. That's a regular thing, but you can see the ratio there anyway, 85% down the peninsula. This one is also concerning to me. Not only does ABC look at undue concentration, they also look at crime data. And again, it's based on census data, not the number of tourism and the amount of tourism that we have or visitors that we have. And so one of the things they look at is if the crime rate in any given district is basically over 20% of the other districts, there's a problem there. There's a problem with the ABC establishments and issuing any other licenses. So this gives you an idea of the violent crime that we have down there in comparison. Now, this is just in comparison to the other areas. We don't have, the crime rate itself is very good here in Newport Beach. I want to emphasize that. Matter of fact, even crime in the peninsula, Part 1 crime was down, citywide it was down 11.5% last year. In the peninsula last year, it was down, I think, 15%. So Part 1 crime, we're going in the right direction, but when you look at the comparison by the other divisions, obviously it's a lot worse. There's a lot more down in Area 1.
Jay, why don't you explain what Part 1 crime is?
I'm sorry, Part 1 crime, those are the crime numbers that we use, that we report to the feds. And that's when they compare cities and look at the official numbers. So Part 1 crime is divided into 2 areas. It's violent crime, which is your murders, rape, robberies, and aggravated assaults. Then you have your thefts, property crimes. And those are basically all of your thefts, whether it's a residential burglary, a car burglary, a petty theft, a grand theft, a theft of a vehicle, theft of stuff inside your vehicle. It's basically all your thefts, bike thefts. Those come into the property crimes. And so here, this is the violent crime, which is split out of Part 1 crime. So just the violent crime, and I'll show you a couple of the specific violent crime categories. Now, what's important, and thank you for pointing that out, is Part 1 crime is one thing, quality of life is another thing. The urinating in public, the drunk driving, the drunk in public, those are not part of Part 1 crimes. Those are a separate category. So when we talk about quality of life issues, we may not have a tremendous violent crime problem, but we have a quality of life issue that I think is evident by when you look at the alcohol-related arrests. I'm going to show you the time frame for those as well. Those are coming up here. But so when we look at violent crime, 44%. But did that answer your question, ma'am? You look at the violent crime, 44%. When we break it down, we look at just aggravated assault, which is part of violent crime. 41% of those happen in the peninsula. And by the way, the majority of these, we've looked at all of them, the majority of these are alcohol-related. When we look at rapes, 59% in the peninsula. Majority of those alcohol-related. And here's an interesting one I thought people would like to see. So what we do is we run the people that we arrest. These are all alcohol-related arrests and citations, and we run them by all those who were residents of Newport Beach or say that they live in the city of Newport Beach, which was 18% of them, which means 82% of them did not live in the city of Newport Beach. And I say live in the city, it's anyone in the city, not just the peninsula. So these are the people that we arrest on the peninsula for alcohol-related crimes. 82% of them are not from our city. So they're drawn down to the peninsula. These problem people, if you will, are drawn down to the peninsula for, in this case, the ABC activities.
Is there any time of day where those arrests are more prevalent than others?
Yes, that's a great question. Look at that.
Oh, next slide.
So,
I peeked.
thanks for the segue there. So this is a very confusing looking slide, and really what you need to look at and concentrate on, this is what's called a heat grid. And you look at the red areas. The redder it is, the higher the volume is. And so when you look at this, and I'll explain it because there's 3 of these. This is alcohol-related violations by time of day and day of week. Now this is 8 years worth of data that we put together. So we've gone by day of week. You can see across the top, Monday through Sunday, and hour of day. So it starts at 12 midnight. That's 12 to 1 in the morning, and goes all the way down throughout the day. So when you look at under Sunday, in that red area, it says 4:01 right underneath Sunday. That is basically between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning, or Saturday night to Sunday morning. That's what that is. So when you look at the heat grid here for alcohol-related violations, you see that most of those are occurring. You can see we start to peak at about 9, 10 o'clock at night, and then it tapers off about 3 o'clock in the morning. So that's the highest volume. And then you can see day of week. When you look down at the bottom row, you can see Friday, Saturday, Sundays are obviously the busiest days. So without getting into too much detail, if you just look at the heat, if you will, on this grid, you can see where most of those arrests. Now this is just alcohol-related arrests. Then we also looked at overall arrests, all arrests on the peninsula. When are they taking place? And it's pretty much the same pattern. You can see down there, starts at about, 9, 10 o'clock at night on the weekends, goes through to about 3 o'clock in the morning. This next one is calls for service. Calls that the police department gets for service down in just the peninsula. This is over the last 6 years, it looks like. Yeah, 6 years. Again, you can see fairly the same pattern. Weekend day starts to pick up a little bit more for calls, but still the highest volume is going to be those ABC hours past 11 o'clock, about 3 in the morning. And this obviously goes to the volume of resources that the police department has to put out there. A couple of interesting facts I thought you'd like to know that are important to us. This first one, this is, we talked about the number of ABC establishments. Really what matters is how many people are in those establishments. Here is just the number of those. This is maximum occupancy of those ABC establishments open past 11 p.m. So you're creeping up on 4,000 people, not counting the boats. Remember, the boats are an issue as well. As if you say a party or a wedding goes out, a couple hundred people on a boat, then they come back and dock after they've had a few hours out of drinking, and they all get let off onto the peninsula as well. What this does not count is places like Lido Live, which will add another 500 to this number on those nights that they have special events. But they have permits, and they actually hire extra officers for them. But those numbers, when you think about it, okay, and this is maximum occupancy. They're not always at maximum occupancy, although I will tell you sometimes they're over maximum occupancy. This creates a problem at 2 o'clock in the morning. This many people who have been drinking pushed out on the peninsula.
Wait, Jay, let me get that right. Are you suggesting that there are 3,823 people drinking, or are you saying there are 3,823 people occupying these spots?
The latter. I don't know who's drinking, but they're
Okay.
all in ABC establishments.
So if they're leaving these places and they're sober, that's no threat to the police department.
Well, it depends on what they're doing, but they're not. It's less of a threat usually when they're not drinking. The problem is usually the ones that are drinking.
I'm not suggesting we
hear
don't
you.
have a problem, but we
Yeah.
don't need to
I'm not trying to say
inflate how bad the problem
all
is.
3,800 people in there are drunk when they come out.
Okay,
I don't
good.
mean
Thank
that
you.
at all. But I will also add that if you go before 11 o'clock, that number doubles to almost 8,000. You'll see that actually in some of these numbers. When you look, this is citywide. The single busiest area and hour of the week for police calls for service is Area 1 Saturday night from 10 to 11. Again, we have almost 8,000 occupancy before that time, not counting the boats.
That doesn't, throughout the day, doesn't include the alcohol being consumed in homes, of course, and parties
Right.
and that type of thing, and
That's
the
correct.
off-premises liquor.
Yes, ma'am. And here we have area and hour of the week with the most arrests, and this is citywide, and that is actually just a couple hours past that calls for service time, that next morning between 1 to 2 a.m. on Saturday nights or Sunday morning, closing time, basically. Highest number of arrests. This next slide, I thought you might find interesting. When you think about calls for police service, I'd ask you to think, how many times have the policemen called to your house this last year or to your business this last year? And for most people, that's going to be zero. Or maybe if you have a business that's open to the public, you made a couple calls. Actually, funny, right before I walked over here, drove over here, I had my staff run, I saw Jim Walker. I said, run the bungalow for me. Tell me how many calls for service you had at the bungalow this past year. He had 4. I didn't even bother to look what those calls are, but he had 4. And that's really not unreasonable for a business, and he's got an ABC license and a business that's open to the public. But when you start looking at businesses, they get up to, a dozen, you're once a month. Is that unreasonable? What number in your mind, and I ask you to pick a number, what number in your mind do you think is unreasonable to start thinking, hey, you know what, now this gets to be a drain on police resources, on taxpayer money, because when we're here at this location, we're not somewhere else. And so what number in your mind is a reasonable number for it to be okay, this many calls for service is probably reasonable. So you get up to, a dozen, that's once a month. 2 dozen, you're talking almost every other week you're there. There's some numbers for you. There's some explanation to go with these, but I'll let you look at those for just a second. And this really kind of drives home the point of the issue. Keep in mind, we have a lot of places that push out a lot of people at different times during the day. Every day between 2 and 3 o'clock, we have thousands of kids getting pushed out of school. Some that don't live in our city that come to our city for school. Newport Harbor High is one that comes to mind. Every Sunday at 12 o'clock, we have thousands of people pushed out of our churches. None of these people cause a response for police services because we know the alcohol establishments are just a different animal. We understand that. An example I want to give here is a district lounge. Mario here? There he is. So I use Mario as an example for the district. 119 calls. I will tell you, first of all, that about 15 to 20 of those are officer initiated. In other words, we weren't called there. We went there because either like a bar check or something like that. But in the 28 years I've been in this business, I've dealt with a lot of managers, a lot of bar managers, and a lot of bar owners. And I will tell you that Mario is probably one of the most responsive and probably one of the most responsible I've ever dealt with when it comes to bar management. To me, this indicates that no matter how good a manager you are, this type of business is going to cause a drain on police resources. It just is, we know that. And so we got to figure out a way to minimize that as much as possible. But at the same time, know that, the more ABC licenses we have down there, it's going to create a need for more police responses. It's just plain and simple. That's the way it works. Like I say, it's a different crowd you attract down there. You attract people from outside by the stats, by our arrests, and how many people from outside come down here. But these are the numbers of calls. Talk about some anecdotal information. We had a doctor from Hoag Hospital. Is he here?
He's not here. He did submit his comments for the record. I think I sent you a copy.
You did, thank you. Well, should I save that and let you talk about those later?
Go ahead, as long as you're talking about it now.
Essentially, he talked about the impacts on the hospitals that alcohol has on the hospitals. And any given night, particularly weekend night, the hospitals, some of the ERs, Hoag in particular, will have to close down the ER because they're so impacted, and they can't take the heart attack victim because they have so many people that are there for alcohol-related issues. Everything from alcohol poisoning to the trip and falls to the car accidents to the fights, everything else. We tried to get a hold we did get a hold of Hoag Hospital to ask for the specific stats. They don't stat them that way in terms of how many are alcohol related or not. But anecdotally, the doctors are telling us, yeah, it's not uncommon to have to shut down the ER and have to, when I say shut down, divert responses to other hospitals because of that. So I gave you some stats, but I want to tell you just some recent anecdotal information about just over the last couple of weeks, and this is not uncommon information or not uncommon things that happen, but when think about living down the peninsula and at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, waking up to have a stranger standing in your house. That can be pretty nerve-rattling for some folks. Last week we had one, the week before last, I think we had one, a gal that was drinking an American Junkie, got completely inebriated, went into somebody else's house thinking it was hers. The residents kicked her out. She went to 3 more houses before we finally caught up to her and took her to jail. And talking to my crime analyst who reads all these reports, that happens about once a week down there, where somebody will go into somebody else's house, or people will find people asleep on their couch. They'll wake up and find someone asleep on their couch in their house. That could be a little unraveling, I think, if you live down there. Another incident we had at Cassie's just a couple weeks ago. A couple guys, both drinking, females involved. A guy's girlfriend, apparently one of the guys walked up and made a whatever inappropriate comment about his girlfriend. He was going to defend her honor. The liquid courage started talking for both of them. They got in a fight. One of them grabbed a glass and slashed the other guy's face up pretty significantly, where he had to go to the hospital. Actually had to be diverted. Had to go to trauma center, was diverted from Western Maine, had to go to UCI. His girlfriend, I believe, got cut up a little bit too. The bouncers got a hold of the suspect who sliced him up, and not uncommon, kicked him out the front door. So he's out on the peninsula. We responded, took care of it, ended up catching the guy and everything. And I asked my staff, I said, well, how many of our resources, police resources, did that take up on the peninsula for that call? They said it didn't take up the police resources on the peninsula. It was the entire west side. Every police unit responded to that call and got tied up on that call, because there's so many things to do. First of all, you have a guy out there that's outstanding, so they're searching for him. An officer has to go to the hospital with the victim, officer with the female. All the witnesses have to be interviewed. When we find the suspect, he gets arrested, transported to jail, reports involved in all that. Several officers are taken out of commission for quite some time for that one incident. And so they're tied up to handle, and can't handle those other things, such as the quality of life issues, such as the dozen people that are urinating on the lawns and that kind of stuff that night. So that's the issue we have. It's just a resource issue for us. We have some great managers, I'll tell you, in some of our bars, and we have some good relationships with them. But that's the dynamic that we have going on down there. And I'm not here to just complain about things. I want to tell you some of the things that we've done about it. First of all, when it comes to police staffing, like everybody else, we've had our hits on staffing over the last decade or so. Currently, from our high of staffing, we're probably down about 10 officers and about 10 civilian staff. But to make up for that, we're working a lot smarter and more efficient. We redid our scheduling. We do now what's called team policing and geographic policing, where we now have a sergeant and a team of officers assigned to a specific area, working together with the same days, same geographical responsibilities. And it's really made for a lot better policing, more efficient policing, and taking ownership in their area. Better accountability with my management team. I have those 4 areas. Each area has a lieutenant that's responsible for that area. Lieutenant Saylor used to be responsible for the peninsula. Now Lieutenant Query is. I don't know if he's here today or not. But so, and every month, at a minimum once a month, they have to stand tall before me and my command staff and talk about all the crime in the area and what they're doing about it. And I think that's why you're seeing the crime reductions. One of the reasons why you're seeing the good crime reductions we are for at least Part 1 crime. A couple of years ago, the city council enacted our operator's license, and I know Ms. Brandt's going to speak about that in a moment, so I won't talk too much about that. But between that and the Lugo ordinance that we enacted, that really kind of gave us some teeth. You had things like loud parties happen on the peninsula, and we'd go and write a citation, and what they do, literally, pass a hat, collect $100, $200 for the citation, and keep partying. There was really no teeth in it. Same thing for the operator's license. You have establishments down there, we got a good crowd today, we're going to let more in than we're allowed to have in. We cite them for overcrowding, so what? They make more money than the ticket costs. It was more lucrative to violate the law even when they got caught. So the operator's license kind of helps with that a little bit. We've never used that. We have used the Lugo ordinance probably a couple dozen times altogether. That has really helped with some of our issues down there. We've also hired a new civilian investigator position, thanks to the council who created this new position for us in HR. Wendy Joe, who's here with us today, she's in that new position, who will be our liaison with ABC. We have found that we've missed the link with ABC over the past few years because of a position that was eliminated. We now have that back and working closely with them, and one more body in our Vice and Intelligence section to help with that. Have a new computer-aided dispatch and records management system. It's a $2 million system that this council approved a couple years ago. We're still in the implementation phase. It's implemented, but still figuring out all the bugs and and all the bells and whistles, actually. But one of the things that it does, it allows us, and we just turned this on recently, allows us to track any arrest and where they were last drinking. So we get a drunk driver, we get a drunk in public, whatever. We find out, we ask them, you know, where's the last place you had a drink? And we see a certain place that comes up on a regular basis. And we go have a chat with that manager and say, hey, listen, this is what we're seeing. What could be the problem? How can we work together to fix this? We're not in the business of shutting places down, by the way, which was a rumor out there. And the last one, working with the owners and management, I think Mayor Pro Tem Dixon is going to talk more about this for a particular area, but we have been doing that. I think there's room for improvement here, but I think that's key, is building those relationships with the community, with the owners, and working together to try and remedy some of these problems. I want these businesses to be successful, at the same time responsible, and the community needs to be able to not have people walk in their house at 2 o'clock in the morning. So with that, any questions for me?
Any questions for the chief?
Let's turn it to the, or no, I guess, Kim, are we going?
Kim's going to go next.
Just one moment, we'll switch PowerPoints. Good afternoon, Mayor Selich, members of the council. I'm Kim Brandt, Community Development Director, and with me I have Senior Planner Greg Ramirez. And we're going to give some information to you this afternoon regarding land use and zoning controls that we have, actually citywide, but in particular how they relate to Balboa Peninsula. So the city regulates, as part of its governance land use through its general plan and zoning code. And the zoning code includes a zoning map which designates which areas are appropriate for residential, which areas are appropriate for commercial, what areas are appropriate for open space. And so this snapshot before you shows the Balboa Peninsula area, and the residential areas, it's a little hard to tell, but are in the tan and little pale yellow colors. Your commercial districts are shown in the red and the salmon colors, and the salmon color relates to mixed use. The green is your open space area, which I think the most prominent feature in Balboa Peninsula is the beach area. So through the city's zoning code, that is how the city regulates the commercial businesses. And for businesses that serve alcoholic beverages, there's an entire section within the municipal code that talks about how such applications are to be processed through the city and what type of operational standards or conditions of approval are required for that business to be approved and to operate. The process is typically called a conditional use permit, and based on its hours of operation, there's a threshold that determines whether that standard or that review process will be accomplished through the city's zoning administrator or through the city's planning commission. And as I related, there are numerous operational standards that are in the municipal code and required to be placed on these businesses as conditions of approval. And there's additional review criteria that are applied when a business is open past 11 p.m. because, as already identified by Chief Johnson's presentation, is considered a very sensitive time for the community. As Chief Johnson also mentioned, the city back in 2011 did adopt a new layer of regulation for businesses that are open past 11 p.m. that serve alcoholic beverages, and that's called an operator's license. And that license, again, is applicable to restaurants and restaurants that are open past 11 p.m. And these are new restaurants. And then bars, lounges, nightclubs, and businesses with entertainment and or dancing, regardless of when they close. The operator's license can be applied to an existing business at such time that the business is modified by, one, increasing its occupancy or changing its operation. The operator's license, by its name, is given to the operator and is not transferable. So for instance, if a business were to close and a new business were to open up, that new business owner would be required to come in and get an operator's license. There may not be a change in the conditional use permit, but there would be a change in the operator's license. Currently, we have 14 approved active licenses within the entire city. 4 of those are located in Balboa Peninsula, and 7 are located in Newport Center. And we have 4 pending applications. So this graphic indicates all the businesses with ABC licenses on Balboa Peninsula. And I want to just reiterate Chief Johnson's comment that these are businesses or establishments with ABC licenses, and there's a total of 100 businesses. And as Chief Johnson mentioned, there are some businesses that have more than one license, where they have a catering license in addition to their on-premise license. This graphic also breaks down the ABC licenses by whether or not it's an on-sale license, meaning that the alcoholic beverage is consumed on the premises. The green indicates the excursion boats that we have within licenses, and there are 22. And off-sale premises, and those are establishments that sell alcoholic beverages for consumption off-premise or off-sale, and there's a total of 11. So that would include pavilions or any other, like a liquor store. So we then went and prepared 2 graphics that indicate which establishments that sell alcoholic beverages for on-site consumption are open late hours past 11 p.m. And this graphic indicates the Upper Peninsula area, and there are a total of 19 businesses. Just to orient you, this is Coast Highway, and this is the Marina Park area. This graphic indicates the area surrounding Balboa Village. This is Newport Pier here. Thank you. I knew that. Balboa Pier. And there are a total of 7. So going forward, we have, as I mentioned, regulations already in place within the city's zoning code. We do have the operator's license in the municipal code and being applied to new businesses and existing businesses when they meet certain thresholds. The provisions with the zoning code also apply to new businesses and again to existing businesses when they meet certain thresholds. So we've outlined 2 different options for the City Council to consider this afternoon. The first is to maintain the city's existing city regulations and work with the Peninsula's restaurant and bar owners and managers on a voluntary basis to improve their management and operations. And what could that mean? That could include forming a Balboa Peninsula Restaurant and Bar Committee, which could include Mayor Pro Tem Dixon as a member representing her district, and key staff from both the Police and Community Development Department. The committee could meet on a monthly basis to discuss common issues and to identify solutions, and to share and develop best practices for the management and operation of these businesses. Staff could return back to the City Council in 6 months to give you a status report of what the committee has been working on and any change or statistics as it relates to crime activity on the peninsula. And in this interim period, which could go anywhere from 6 months to 18 months, depending on the council's direction, the zoning administrator could refer all applications for conditional use permits to the Planning Commission for review and approval. As I mentioned earlier, the zoning administrator currently has authority pursuant to the zoning code to review applications for ABC licenses when the business closes by 11 p.m. But in this interim period, if the City Council desired, these applications could be referred to the Planning Commission for consideration and action. And then for a companion option to this working group is for city staff and key members of city council to meet with interested residents and representatives from the Restaurant and Bar Committee, and again, police and community development staff, to review recent activities that are going on within the peninsula. So that could be police department crime statistics, it could be activities of the Restaurant and Bar Committee, as well as review of upcoming applications for new businesses that contain ABC licenses. A second option, which we have been talking about, is potentially creating an overlay district for the Balboa Peninsula area that's specifically applicable to restaurants and bars that serve alcoholic beverages. Potential components of this overlay district may include requiring all new businesses to obtain a conditional use permit that's reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission. You could require, as part of the overlay, a conditional use permit for any change in operation for an existing business that doesn't have a conditional use permit. This overlay district could include new operational standards, particularly for those that are open past 11 p.m. And again, those would be applied in conjunction with a conditional use permit. And another thing for the City Council to consider as part of the overlay district is to include some economic incentives for restaurant and bar owners to improve their properties and business. And that could include things such as fee waivers, facade improvement grant programs, or parking relief as just a few examples. So with that, I will conclude my comments, and of course I'm available for questions.
Any questions from council? Councilmember Muldoon?
I believe in option 2 you talk about a zoning administrator. What is the current process that they put the permit applications through?
Thank you, Councilmember Muldoon. That's a good question. Any business within that wants to serve alcoholic beverages, regardless of where they're located in the city, requires either a conditional use permit or what we call a minor use permit. And the distinction is whether or not they're open past 11 p.m. So if a business is coming in and they intend to close by 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. or 10:30, then that application can be reviewed and approved by the zoning administrator. That is a staff position. It is a notice public hearing, meaning that there is a notice to all the property owners within 300 feet of the proposed location will receive a notice, a mailed notice. We also put a notice in the newspaper indicating when the hearing will be on the project. So instead of coming to the Planning Commission, it's held by the zoning administrator, usually in the afternoon during the week. So that would be the zoning administrator. And then the Planning Commission meets twice a month, and their hearing is similar in the fact that it's a notice public hearing and it's mailed out as well as published in the paper, but it comes before a 7-member body as opposed to one person.
As I understand it now, it's generally preferable to send it to Planning Commission, but they have the right to approve it themselves if it falls within the parameters you've given?
Yes, the zoning administrator has the authority to refer any item to the Planning Commission if the zoning administrator felt that it's appropriate. But the zoning code is very clear as to which items or applications are appropriate for the zoning administrator to review.
And is there sort of a common practice on the peninsula?
The common practice at this point is that the zoning administrator does follow the parameters set forth in the zoning code, but there has been an instance or two where the zoning administrator has gone ahead and forwarded an item to the Planning Commission. And the reason being that is, one, if there's an anticipation there's going to be significant public comment or neighborhood concern, and sometimes the Planning Commission forum is a better place to voice those concerns.
But this option transfers it from discretionary to mandatory, essentially.
It's a direction where the City Council could say that during this period that the City Council would ask that, or it could be a zoning code change at a later date where it's made permanent.
And does that affect any existing businesses, that particular aspect of that option?
It would only affect a business that has a pending application, and we could take care of that as part of the zoning code change.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one. How many zoning administrator applications have been overturned by the Planning Commission that have been appealed up?
That's a very good question, and I don't have the answer off the top of my head, and I'm looking at Greg.
Well, are you aware of any? Let's start there.
I'm not aware of any that have been completely reversed. There might have been some minor changes to conditions of approval, but nothing that has been completely reversed that I can recall. If something comes to mind, I will let you know.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Dixon?
Are we open for public comment?
Well, I'll open it up if you...
No, I don't have any other
Okay.
questions at this point.
Okay, we'll open it up for public comment, and we'll ask Mario Marovic to come up first, and then Mr. Rice will come up second, then open it to general comment. So, Mario, you out there somewhere?
In the last few weeks since this,
State your name, please.
Mario Marovic, I live in Newport Beach, work in Newport Beach. In the last few weeks since we've been talking about the possible overlay, we've been involved in multiple discussions with Councilwoman Dixon, with different members of staff, city council, police department, and we've gotten a majority of the operators together in one room with Councilwoman Dixon as well. We talked about, impacts on the community, things each operator does individually on how to, use a best practices method for managing their business. And we collaborated with industry professionals and talked about what different cities do and, different police departments require. And we came together and kind of formulated an outline of what each bar owner and restaurant owner who's open past 11 p.m. can possibly do together collectively if we came together as an organized group. I have an outline that I put together, and if you guys want to hear it, I can walk you through it. First off, we talked about having regular meetings that currently don't exist, having meetings at least every other month or more frequently as we feel that it's needed. At these meetings, oftentimes we would invite the police department, members of city council, and city staff if they'd like to attend. This is something that we did do in the past. About 7 years ago, the police department approached me, and we did form a bar tavern association. The city of Newport Beach Police Department got a grant for about $500,000 from the state of California. And I believe at that time it was Detective Brian Moore was heading the ABC investigations, and we worked together, and it really seemed to be a very effective method to help minimize impact in the community. Some of the things we want to do as operators is have all of our employees. We want to work together to have all employees on the peninsula LEEDS class certified. Is everyone familiar with what LEEDS class certification is? LEEDS class certification is a state of California ABC program where you teach your employees the best practices on responsible liquor service, how to handle problem situations, how to identify IDs. It's a very comprehensive training program for anyone that works in a restaurant or bar environment. Taking it to a next level, having every security member that works for a restaurant or a bar guard card certified. Guard card certification, I feel, is very effective. It actually adds a whole nother layer. The guard card certification is not only a training program, but you also background check and live scan, you fingerprint every possible candidate that would work at your establishment, effectively weeding out, through a background check, and teaching them also, proper ways to, handle problem situations, check IDs, and basically work in conjunction with the city of Newport Beach. We would take the state of California guidelines of having at least one security guard who's guard card certified per every 50 patrons. So, maybe some places already do that. Maybe some places have more. Maybe some places have less. But
Continue on, we'll give you extra
making
time.
that kind of a guideline. So if, you had an occupancy of 150 people, you would have no less than, 3 security guards who would work after 11 p.m. We'd put it together, we'd ask everyone to get surveillance systems. that'll be very effective because it not only is a nice deterrent for anybody who sees cameras up, it can also be used as a tool for the city to identify any situations that already occurred. And also radio headsets, two-way headsets with earpieces like the police department already uses. I found that to be very effective. The reason being is if there's a situation, it's communication within your establishment. If you have a problem at the front door, instead of trying to look around and see if somebody's there to help you, you can literally squeeze your shirt button, ask for assistance, and you have 3 people behind you. And I call it being proactive instead of reactive, eliminating issues before they happen instead of trying to address them after they've already occurred. So I feel between the guard card certification, the leads class, the surveillance systems, the regular bar, tavern, and city meetings, I kind of feel that communication within the community will be much more effective than putting together an ordinance that doesn't really require communication.
Okay, thank you. Sure, go ahead.
Mario, thank you. Could you characterize the discussions you've had with some of your business owner colleagues on the peninsula and their reaction to some of your ideas?
The reaction is very positive. I think this whole movement kind of got everyone together and to kind of collaborate and sit together as a collective group and talk about things that we can do better. And I've said in the past, every organization has room for improvement, whether it's a city, private enterprise, whatever it is. This is an opportunity for us to come together and say, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And what can we fix and what can we build on? So if anything, this entire process has been a nice foundation for a beginning.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Marovic? Councilmember Petros.
Yeah, Mario, you also own properties in the Fullerton area?
Yes, I do. I have 2 restaurants in Fullerton.
And you've been there for a while?
Quite a while, correct.
Would you characterize, and Fullerton has had problems in the past as well.
Yes.
Would you characterize the Fullerton experience something similar to what Chief Johnson has characterized for the peninsula?
Yeah, the Fullerton experience was interesting because...
Probably even worse, right?
What's that?
Fullerton was probably even worse than what...
Substantially. The problem with Fullerton was they issued probably 25 brand new licenses with no CUPs and no restrictions, all open until 2 o'clock in the morning within a short period of time. So you had a downtown area with about 2 or 3 establishments, and within a matter of 5 years, you had about 25 to 30. And what happened is the CUPs weren't even implemented. It was, you want to be open until 2 o'clock in the morning, here's a license, you're open until 2, let's figure it out later. What Fullerton did is it was kind of like herding cats. They had to get all the operators in line, they had to issue CUPs that didn't previously exist, and they had to work together with the community. What's happened in Fullerton is the police department and the restaurant and bar owners come together, and they actually do this program. They come together with regular group meetings, they identify issues and concerns, they talk about things we could do better, and Fullerton has leaps and bounds become a success story. In the last 7 or 8 years, Fullerton went from a downtown area with no rules and regulations, and now it's completely, kind of come together and everyone works together. It's really helped become a community, and everyone works together and they communicate.
So by virtue of self-regulation, there's been a shift in crime and the interruption in Fullerton, and there's better communication amongst bar owners, restaurant owners, and the city.
Big time.
Okay, thank you.
Time. Furthermore, in Fullerton, when we took over a location on the corner of Commonwealth and Harbor, previously known as the Rock and Taco, the city did not want it to reopen, and we reopened it, and now we got letters of recommendation from the police captain, the chief of police, stating that we took the troubled location in town and made it, quote unquote, the cornerstone for success. And a lot of it was working with the police department, with the city, implementing guard card certification, leads class certification, and communicating with other operators, and really turning things around.
I have another question. What can you characterize, what did actually improve in Fullerton? Typically, when you have this working relationship, this collaboration, you and I have often talked that once people leave the premises, who knows where they go. Where do you see the impact of working together with the security, the certifications? You also have told me in the past, too, you also enforce a dress code, which I think you feel positively contributes to maintaining order. So how does this all help reduce the negative impacts in the community, the surrounding community?
Percentages. If every place operates more effectively, if every place has more effective forms of communication, if every place works together to address possible problems and be proactive instead of reactive, I think overall you have, I can't remember what the exact number was, I think there's about 20 late night establishments on the peninsula. If every place is shaving off percentages and issues, and collectively it's going to be a big number. And if everyone works together and you identify false IDs better at the front door, and you identify people that are intoxicated before they become a problem, you cut people off quicker, I don't see any negative in having people LEEDS class certified, guard card certified, and it helps in every aspect of the business.
Okay, thank you, Mario. Thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Mr. Rice, are you here?
Mayor and council members, my name is Joe Reese. I'm a resident here in Newport Beach. I'm here today representing a number of residents, some who could not be here because of work schedules and other commitments, others who are just worn out and tired of going to another city council meeting, planning commission meeting, zoning administrator meeting to talk about ABC problems on the peninsula. We're all tired of beating the drum. But today is a new day. I've lived here for 10 years, and this is the first time I've seen everyone come together, residents, bar and restaurant owners, city staff, and business owners, to collectively come up with a comprehensive plan to deal with the crime problems on the peninsula related to the alcohol establishments. This is an opportunity that can have a tremendous impact on the community for years to come. Let's not waste this opportunity. Let's work together and solve the problem. Thank you, Councilmember Dixon, for your leadership in this area and for bringing us together. Now, we've heard a lot of discussion talking about existing bars and restaurants, but I propose there's two prongs to this problem. The second part of it is I provided for you a proposal created by residents with recommendations on how to improve our alcohol review process for ABC applications in the overconcentrated high crime area of the peninsula. From residents' feedback, I've also created a list of the top 10 recommendations residents have brought up and asked that I provide to you at this meeting. It's our hope these recommendations start a dialogue here in the city and lead to a strategic plan to help us move forward with these new businesses coming in. There are 3 points I'd like to specifically talk about today. In the last 6 weeks, I've been to 2 planning commission meetings on ABC applications, one for Sancho's Tacos and the other one for Sessions Deli Sandwiches. Both locations are a couple blocks away from each other, and both agreed to close at 9 p.m. if they received an ABC license. The city staff recommended approval of one, but not the other. In the meeting, I watched as the planning commissioners struggle to come to a decision. They were clearly confused why one location was recommended for approval and the other was not. They finally decided that at closing at 9 p.m., that should help solve the problem, and they issued the ABC license. The question I asked the planning commissioners and the council members, Diane Dixon and Scott Piotr, is 9 p.m. the benchmark for granting ABC licenses? This cannot be the benchmark. Every coffee shop, juice bar, and sandwich shop will be asking for an ABC license. Watching the planning commissioners at these past 2 meetings was obvious they need more information from city staff to make good decisions about ABC applications. That is why it is critical to establish stricter guidelines for approval of ABC licenses in this over-concentrated high-crime area on the peninsula. The approval process for an ABC license in the overlay district should be much more stringent than anywhere else in the city. It should not be the same guidelines that we apply everywhere. If we do not regulate the proliferation of ABC establishments on the peninsula, then a state agency will, Alcohol Beverage Control. They will come in and they will put a moratorium on ABC establishments here on the peninsula. Then when we have our new hotel built and wanting to add a restaurant with ABC license and the new restaurants out on the bay, as we do the redevelopment, they will not be able to get an ABC license. We need to control our destiny. Second, we need to hire more police officers and assign them to the peninsula on Thursday and Friday, Saturday nights. Officers should be dedicated to dealing with these nuisance crimes. A A plan needs to be put into place to deal with the intoxicated individuals who cause disturbances, urination, public drunkenness, sex acts in public, and vandalism. Officers have not been able to accomplish this in the past due to a lack of resources. Every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, a paddy wagon should be deployed to arrest offenders. Having a zero tolerance of nuisance crimes will be a deterrent for individuals to come and get drunk in Newport Beach. Finally, the code enforcement officer for the community development and the vice officer for the police department need to work the hours the ABC establishments are most active. Both officers now work the day shift hours during the week. They should work the night hours as much as possible, and certainly on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, checking locations for ABC and code violations. This proactive enforcement is long overdue in the city and has caused a tremendous amount of litigation in the past because of the lack of enforcement. ABC establishments continually push the envelope whenever they can. We need to keep them in compliance. We need the code enforcement and vice officers out there checking them. Thank you for listening to me today and the other members of the community on this important issue. Please follow Councilman Dixon's lead and create an overlay district of some type that will help us on the peninsula. We want this to be a model for others to follow. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Reese? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll now open it up to other comment. I'd let the first two gentlemen go longer than the 3 minutes because they were part of an organized presentation. The other ones, all further speakers, will be 3 minutes. Your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Mark Simon. I reside at 2420 First Avenue in Corona Del Mar. As a commercial real estate agent here in town for Berkshire Hathaway, I am here to urge the council to vote against option 2 and the overlay. Limiting business owners and leaseholders' rights is not the right answer. It's a detriment to the value of their property, and it's a detriment to the value of their leasehold. If you have problems in the peninsula with crime, I suggest you organize better policing. Having police sit out in front of Woody's for 4 months while there's a lawsuit going on there to harass them is not what I consider successful or effective policing. If the city wants people to stop drinking before 2 a.m., the city should talk to the state regulators and ask them to change the legal hours for drinking in the state. The answer is not to punish the property owners, not to punish the leasehold owners, and not to punish the business owners. The answer is to correctly enforce the laws on the peninsula. And I respectfully ask you to do that, and not to vote for an overlay, and not to vote to close any further establishments at 11 p.m. When I first came here in town in 1978, there were a plethora of places where you could go listen to live music and go dancing. By the time I bought my house here in '94, the city had successfully eliminated over half of those establishments and continues to do everything in their power to make it as difficult as possible for somebody to allow dancing at their establishment or to have live music. This is not the way to encourage businesses to come to the community and to operate responsibly. If you close them down at 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock, they can't make a sufficient income. It's not the right answer. Please don't do it.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Mayor Ed, members of the City Council. My name is Jim Walker, owner of the bungalow, and also president of the Newport Beach Restaurant Association. 2 quick points. One, in all the statistics that we saw, and most of which have targeted restaurants, and certainly restaurants have a responsibility to bear. What I didn't see was any kind of information or statistics regarding rental properties, off-sale liquor stores or markets, recovery homes, and or homeless. You know, all of these contribute to the problem of drinking, urinating, and all of the other issues that we have, not only on the peninsula, but throughout the city of Newport Beach. The other thing I'd like to say is I had the opportunity to attend the meeting with Diane and with the operators from the peninsula, and I have to tell you, I was very impressed with the concern, the participation, the willingness of all of these operators to do what they can. And keep in mind, it's not only being a public service, which we try to be as restaurant operators, but it's also for our own personal reasons that we would do this. First of all, we have a liability to deal with. Secondly, there's a brand, and that brand is simply this. Who wants to come to an area that has a negative cloud? Who wants to come to an area where there are fights and drunks and what have you? We don't want to try and encourage that. It's really our ambition within this industry and with this in this community to try and thwart that, minimize it, because we are business people and we rely on good reputation and good service and good product to survive in our business. So I would encourage you not to do the overlay, but to give us the opportunity to communicate with the community, with the police department, and with the residents to try and solve this problem, which we will willingly do. And many of us already have gone to pretty large expenses to accommodate that. The systems that Mario talked about, frankly, are not cheap. And keep in mind, for every dollar that we spend, we have to minimally earn $10 to recover that one. So when you're spending $1,000 on any given piece of equipment, that's a $10,000 revenue need. So it's not a dollar for dollar exchange. I appreciate what Diana's done. I think it's a good step in the right direction. I don't think the overlay as a threat or a punishment is going to achieve the outcome that's desired here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker. How many people want to speak? Raise your hands. Yeah, you might want to come down to the front here and help this go a little quicker. We're running a little bit behind schedule. Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, members of council, chief. My name is Roger Lockhart. A little bit of background on why I feel I'm qualified to speak here. I was president of the University of Southern California Real Estate Association. I've been a developer, resident of Newport Beach for 35 years. And our family coincidentally owns and operates one of, if not the largest bar in the Old Town Pasadena area. So we have a lot of experience. And we've owned it for a long period of time. So we saw our area go down to where we were ready to sell our organization and our business to where it's one of the best places you can go have dinner and walk around. The LEED certification that was brought up is something that we've done. It isn't cheap, it's expensive, but almost all of the bars, in fact, all of the bars in our area that I know of participate in that training. And we've taken it a step further to where if somebody is turned away at our bar, we'll let other bars know that people are headed their way and to watch out for them. Something that that we do that we don't see in the city that I think you would consider is that, to my knowledge, the police department does not have the support or the direction to cooperate with ABC. In Pasadena, you're arrested. They find out where you were drinking. If it was at our bar, it gets reported to the ABC. There's an administrative hearing. We have a couple of those. I don't have a bar anymore. And it's real good. It's real quick. It's highly effective. The other thing that I'd like to look at is where the numbers really are. We know that we have issues late at night on the weekend, but where are those numbers coming from? How many of those people are coming from the bars, not from parties on the peninsula, not from private yachts in the harbor, not the public ones, from the yacht clubs? I think we need to really dissect where the problems are before we go through and we start taking the businesses away from people who've lived here for a long time and taking away our right to be able to go enjoy. Quite frankly, in the summer, we get off a boat 8:30. We have dinner. If we want to go drink and dance, you've closed us down at 11 o'clock. And I also happen to be one of your constituents, Diane. And so I am in that area. And I think that if the city were to request that the police department work with the ABC, that's one thing. I think you already have the tacit endorsement and cooperation of the restaurant and bar owners moving towards the LEEDs certifications. And that if we do that, that part of the problem generated by that part of the population will go away. we still have the other ones, which are people drinking in the residences, the private boats, all the other stuff that comes with being in a resort community that people come to from the inlet. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Certainly. What was the name of your restaurant in Pasadena?
The 35er. We're at ground zero, Fair Oaks in Colorado.
How long have you been there?
We've owned the business since...
Oh, I know where it is. Yeah, I know.
Probably in the 40s.
Yeah.
It was a very small place. We made it, our capacity is over 400.
Yeah.
So for us to manage it, I think we have, we talked about cameras, I think we have 14 cameras. And so not only do we very proactively identify people who are drinking, we have the ability for the police to come back. And if people are coming in, because we'll have people try to come in, we won't let them in, and it becomes a problem at that point. We've worked with the police department to give them everything that they need to be able to prosecute people who are drunk in public. And, that's one of the things that we can do. The police department can't be out there with video cameras all the time, but we as business owners can put cameras up. We also have a list of people, a book of people who are not welcome in our establishment.
That's good.
And that gets shared.
Well, I certainly want to talk with you further. Those are excellent ideas. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next speaker, please. Don't all jump up at once here.
Hello, my name is Craig Batley, and I've lived on the peninsula for 14 years, and I've observed all this activity, and plus my business allows me to see even more activity. I think what Mario put forth here, a voluntary type program, is really, I think from the comments we've heard tonight, is probably the best way to go. Let the community and the volunteerism of the business owners get together and see what they can do about their problem. Whether it be 6 months, a year, or 18 months, I give it plenty of time to see how that all develops. Several years ago, the Newport Beach had this tremendous problem on the 4th of July. What the city council did was provide additional resources, hired, over 100 policemen and so forth, spent over $100,000 to tamp that down. The resources have been taken away from the police department for the peninsula. They used to have 8 more officers down there, patrol officers and so forth. And I really would urge the city council to go ahead and not only at least give them 4 more officers down there, but maybe the full 8. We hear a lot of comments about the city's rich and they can afford all this. And here's this problem. Why not to give the police department more resources?
Thank you.
Yes, my name is George Schroeder, and I've lived on the peninsula for 25 years. And just to follow up on what Craig has said, yes, we did used to have a huge problem with the 4th of July. There kind of was a prevailing attitude that, well, it's just the 4th of July, it's Newport Beach, this is what happens down there just one day. It's, the birthday of the country, pursuit of happiness. So when the council took a proactive with the police department to kind of tamp it down and change it, there was a lot of pushback because you were going to triple the fines, limit alcohol sales, and do things like that. Well, I just want to say I want to thank you for go ahead and doing that, because you have completely improved the quality of life on the 4th of July. We still have a capacity crowd. What we don't have is the bad actors coming down, getting drunk in public, urinating in public during the daytime, and things like that. Right now, what I'm kind of hearing is we kind of want to maintain what we're doing right now. And I think some people didn't really give a lot of credit to what the police chief said. We have a serious crime problem there. It's not 191% higher on the peninsula, yes, but in reporting district 16 and 15, it's almost 400% higher and maybe 300% higher. So as a person who lives there for 25 years, 24 hours a day, and I saw some of you kind of smile and laugh, and I've seen this before when we talk about the public urination, because a police officer has to actually see that person. If it's your wife who walks out your back door and walks in and steps in somebody's urine, it's not really anything to smile about, okay? And, I've had potted trees lift off of my patio, carried a block down and thrown on my neighbor's car. So that's the type of crime we have. I'm not opposed to any of the businesses staying open, doing what they do, but I'm opposed to the criminal behavior by some of the patrons that leave their establishment. So what I'm asking for is give the police chief what he asked for. He needs more resources. He doesn't have enough. You heard the doctor at the emergency room at Hogue. What if it was your loved one that had a heart attack, was taken to Hogue and was told you can't go to the emergency ward here because it's overcapacity with drunks. We have to drive you to Irvine or Fountain Valley. And what if your loved person didn't hang on because we had too many drunks here? What needs to happen is the people who come here and behave badly need to know that there are consequences. And what will happen is they won't come here anymore or they'll change their behavior. On the 4th of July, we still have capacity crowds. We just don't have as much bad behavior. As a property manager and a landlord, when they wanted to pass the loud and unruly gathering ordinance, a lot of my other landlords approached me and said, I'm concerned, George, they're going to put me out of business. If a person has a party on their barbecue, if it's more than 8 people, they can get a huge fine, and I won't be able to rent my places out. Can I have 30 more seconds? Okay, so what happened is Lugo passed. Our vacancy rates in Newport Beach are 3%. The behavior changed. We have less police resources going after people who do bad behavior. So what I'm asking for is more police resources to not let the people come down here and keep doing what they're doing, because that's not acceptable. Thank you.
Yeah, next speaker, please.
Hi, Christine Simon, Corona Del Mar resident. I'm in favor of option 1, and I'm also in favor of more restrooms on the peninsula. I do think that would help a lot. And I'm also very appreciative to what Chief Johnson has done with the crime rates, and I think Mario's plan would be a good step in the future.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Mike Madlock. I'm the owner and founder of Newport Beach Brewing Company. Since 1995, we've been there. And again, I applaud all of the things that Mario had said about the guard cards. That's something we've been doing since day one. Leads training we've been doing since day one for 20 years. And hence, and cameras as well. We have never had a CUP violation, nor have we had any ABC violation problems. And the other thing is, I'm glad we weren't on the high end of the list with police problems, but we do get a lot of vagrancy issues, and we feel like we want to be able to call the police when we have a situation on our hands, but not let it go against us as we're having a problem in our restaurant. So, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker.
Hello, my name is Brett Vasiglia, and I have been an Orange County resident for the past 6 years. I've lived in Orange, Anaheim, Costa Mesa, and now Newport Beach. I live on 24th Street, which is in the heart of the peninsula, and is about 100 yards away from 7 of the establishments that are on that list. I have to say the most noise and disruptive behavior I've ever heard is on about noontime coming from the beach, rather than 2 or 3 a.m. coming from these establishments. In the past 6 years, this is the most safe I've felt, and the reason that I moved down to the peninsula. The police do a very good job of making sure the crime stays off. I personally have witnessed some of the crimes, but they've been handled correctly by bouncers and bar owners. There will always be crime. We can't change that, but to say that the establishments on the peninsula are responsible for that, I think that is being comparing apples to oranges is not being responsible. So I'm very happy to live on the Newport Beach Peninsula and will continue to live there. And I think, as we stated, if we do it as a community and come together, as Mario stated, I think that's the best way to do it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
No.
Oh.
Just call the next person up.
My name is Nathan Holthauser. I'm a homeowner on 7th Street on the peninsula. I'm also a commercial real estate broker in the community. I spoke at the last meeting regarding some concerns that the commercial owners had, and I was just going to make a couple brief comments of the options. And this is the majority of the people who have buildings that possess an entitlement or a permit past 11 p.m. I would say that the best option that they've expressed to me is to work with the bar owners and to self-regulate, protecting their property rights. And I will also say that if you move forward with the overlay district, it's my opinion that it's going to prohibit any type of redevelopment, reinvestment into these properties, and self-regulation is by far the best choice.
Thank you. Speaker? Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Mike Glenn, resident of Balboa Peninsula. I agree with Jay. I believe that the leaving out the 10 million people that we have visiting on Balboa Peninsula per year is misleading when you look at an 11,000 person population and you try to describe this per capita. We should be looking at these crime rates on a per person basis. We're in a unique situation. We get a lot of visitors. Those should be accounted for in our crime. As Jay said, the vast majority, over 80% of our crime, comes from people that don't live anywhere in Newport Beach. These statistics are very misleading. It appears that the peninsula is just a madhouse. It's not the way it is. In fact, if you run the numbers, you can eliminate about 71% of the per capita rate on the 11,000 versus the per capita rate on the 38,000 people that are actually there annually per day on average. The ABC data as well. Initially, we heard we had 117 ABC licenses on the peninsula. Once again, this is misleading. We're talking about businesses that are open past 11 p.m. That 117 number has nothing to do with the businesses that are open past 11 p.m. As we've heard, that's slightly over 20 that have the authorization to be open past 11 p.m. serving alcohol. There are some, like the gelato store, that don't even serve alcohol. Many others close before 11 p.m. Again, that number is misleading. So I'd ask the city to come back with actual substantial data, identify who these problem people are, where they are coming from. Are they coming from the bars? Or are we just doing spray and pray legislation here and hoping it deals with the crime? I haven't heard any statistics that say where they're coming from for bars, from bars, whether or not these are vacation rentals. I think we should identify the problem before we attempt to solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Selich, council members, my name is TJ Fuentes. I just wanted to make a quick comment. If you guys are for the self-regulation, I think that's the best route. I never think that, I think people can help the people rather than having government be the solution to it. But one thing I wanted to comment on was, if you do a trial period, I'd really appreciate if you guys would be very clear as far as what that's going to consist of. I know that if there is a certain amount of time period, one thing I would worry about from the business owner standpoint is them being targeted for that next 6 months or them being targeted for that next 18 months, getting phone calls. I know there's certain business owners that have already, since this has been brought to them, have been called for code enforcement violations, which weren't true. And so that's something that I hope that you guys would make very clear as far as what exactly that trial period would consist of if you do decide to go the self-regulation route. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other speakers? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Mayor Pro Tem Dixon. Any other questions from the rest of the council? Okay.
Did you want to say something? Okay. I want to thank everyone for coming today and giving your viewpoints and counsel and advice to us on this complicated issue. We certainly heard a lot of good ideas. I think it's clear that there are many factors here. There's no one magic bullet that's going to resolve the situation to everyone's complete satisfaction. But I believe we've heard some good suggestions on possible ways forward that perhaps in combination can improve the situation for residents, for the police, and for the affected business owners. Thank you, residents, for your time and determination to begin a constructive conversation. I want to especially thank and highlight the cooperative spirit and efforts of Mario Morovic and the other business owners who have taken the problem seriously and have come up with a sensible and voluntary code of conduct that you've heard about today for their alcohol-related businesses in their area. I'm showing a slide now. These are business owners, is it coming up, who have voluntarily signed on and agreed to the draft code of operation. They've all been working with Mario, and Mario has communicated to me, and I've met with all of them personally at our recent meetings. And I commend them for their community spirit and responsible way of doing business now and in the future. And I applaud, most importantly, their commitment to our community. And this is only the beginning. I think we have a plan that could very well lessen the nighttime incidents that are concerning to the residents and police, and I would like to give it a chance to work. So first, if I may, I'd like to ask the council to direct the city staff to hold off on the overlay district or any other city regulatory measures. I'd like the police department to meet with the affected business owners on a regular basis in the committee format that we discussed, and on the development, implementation, and monitoring of the voluntary code, which will be defined, as you've heard today. And I would like to request a progress report to the council in 6 months to update us on the procedures being implemented, along with any issues or adjustments that have come up. And I think we should have a council review of the program and its effect on the police statistics after it has been in operation for 1 year. I also think that there is merit to the idea that an increased police presence during peak hours at the minimum will enhance the officer's ability to respond to multiple calls and to serve as a deterrent, further driving down incident numbers. So secondly, I would ask the city manager and the chief to come up with a plan of either hiring or reallocating of resources, or both, to put more boots on the ground on the peninsula at these critical times. I'd like the plan included in the budget proposal for this next fiscal year. I also urge my fellow council members to support any reasonable budget request. I want to thank you all very much for your time and good faith efforts today and in the weeks leading up to today. And I know there's been a lot of concern out in the community, and I'm glad that brought us all together, quite frankly. Building a strong and vibrant community takes everyone's effort and commitment. We want to work together because it is the right thing to do. People helping people is how communities succeed and stay strong, and providing safe neighborhoods for our residents and vibrant business environment for our merchants and business owners. So thank you.
Councilmember Petros.
Yeah, I really appreciate the comments that were made. It seems that we do our best when this council stays out of your business. I think that there has been a lot of comments about, or facts that have been brought forward, that there is an issue of crime on the peninsula. That's why we have a police force, to address the crime. I haven't heard any proposals yet for enhancing that presence, so I would hold off on that. I appreciate the example that Fullerton sets for us. They had a real issue in that city prior to self-policing. And we can look at that as a primary example of what good stewardship can do. It has resulted in a resolution of an issue in that downtown area. This is a study session, though. This is not the city council meeting where we will act on a matter. So while the proposals before us are interesting, I would like to make sure that this comes back to the council before anybody does anything, so that we can see precisely what it is that we are being asked to vote on. So I appreciate the notion that, and a demonstrated issue here. I am supportive of a self-policing attempt, but I would like to see specifics at a regularly agendized city council meeting before we act or direct anybody to do any actions here. Thanks.
Councilman Curry.
Well, first of all, I want to thank and commend Mayor Pro Tem Dixon for her leadership in this effort in bringing this issue to the fore, in working with the bar and restaurant owners, and for Mario and his group in organizing the restaurant owners to come together to come up with these proposals, and for your work in getting everybody in the room and working on a very complicated and a complex issue that's been long-standing, and bringing real solutions here based on listening to the residents. I think that's a tremendous accomplishment today, and I think these are all outstanding recommendations, and I think we need to have an opportunity for you and for the restaurant owners to work together to achieve these goals and to improve the situation in a measurable way for the residents, because ultimately that's who we represent, is the residents on the peninsula who face these issues day to day. And I would hope that those of you who are in the audience who will work in a bar or restaurant on the peninsula saw these statistics and they were sobering to you, and take them seriously, because those are the problems that are faced by our residents and our neighbors on a daily basis. And if they stay where they are, we're going to find other ways to address them. But I think we're off to a good start because of your leadership, and I think that this is a good way for us to go to begin now to make the peninsula a better place to live and to visit.
Thank you. Any other comments? I don't think anyone up here objects to Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Dixon's proposal. I don't see any heads nodding no. Does that give you enough direction? And then this will come back to council for formal consideration?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We appreciate all of your comments and input today. So we will now leave the regular meeting of the City Council, leave that meeting open, but at the same time, we will now convene if you can be quiet on the way out, we would appreciate it. We have other business to take care of. We'll now convene a joint meeting of the City Council and the City Finance Committee. Can we have the Finance Committee members come down to the front, please? I saw some of you hanging out in the back. So I will call the joint meeting of the City Council and the Finance Committee to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Is Finance Committee Member McCullough here? Okay. The record will reflect that Finance Committee Member Warner has an excused absence, but the other 3 citizen members are here and the council members are in attendance.
Okay, excellent. Okay, the item on the agenda is the look at the capital improvements program, and I'm going to be recusing myself from the first item. It's going to be a discussion on Bayside Drive because my home's on that street, and Councilmember Duffy will be recusing himself on the second item, and he'll explain that when he does so. And so we're going to take the Bayside Drive item first, and I'm going to turn the chair over to Mayor Pro Tem Dixon. We're going to have a staff presentation. There'll be council discussion and public comments on that item. Once that's complete, I'll return, and then Councilmember Duffy. Did he leave already? He'll recuse himself. For the Mariners Mile discussion, we'll have a staff presentation, council discussion, and public comment on that item. Councilmember Duffy will then return, and we'll continue with the rest of the capital improvements program. Sorry for the complicated explanation, but that's the way of the Brown Act. So I'll now recuse myself and turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Dixon.
All right, so I'll turn it over to...
I'll start first, Dave, just some initial comments. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Dixon. And so as Mayor Selich noted, this will be a little bit disjointed, so we're going to jump kind of in the middle of Dave's presentation to talk about Bayside Drive and then Mariners Mile. This is your opportunity as a council and the community's opportunity to have what we call the early look at what we will propose putting in the budget. And we're specifically asking for a sense of your concerns or questions about any of these. You don't have to prioritize them today. They would end up going in the budget, and you'll have much greater discussion about that. But this is an opportunity to ask a question about a project you've always been curious about. It's an opportunity to say if there's something in here that you expected to see but didn't see. So think about those kinds of things. So with that, I'll turn that over to Dave then.
Thank you, Dave.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Excited to be before you today. This is a very large program, and feel free to ask questions as we go along. We have a lot of material in here, and I'll try to be brief because I know your time is short today. But as Mr. Kiff said, we'll go through and you'll have an opportunity to look at things and give us some input. So I am going to jump right away to our first project you'll see here, and the screened out area is part of a slide you'll see later, but we won't be talking about the screened out area. We're just going to be talking about Bayside Drive right now. One of the projects we're proposing for next year is to basically reconfigure and improve Bayside Drive from Marine Way, Jamboree, all the way to Coast Highway. This area of street is a very wide street. It's become very fast. It's had some accident history. And it's also, the pavement is getting very deteriorated in that area. So it's ripe for basically a road diet, some kind of modification. We also have, this is the primary route for the junior guards as they go from the inland areas to Balboa Island and across over to the bridge. We also have bus routes on here. So we're looking at something like reconfiguring the street, bringing it down maybe to a one lane each direction with bike lanes on each side, maybe an on-street bike trail on one side, more vegetation to slow the street down. So we're looking for the design money in this project. It's about $350,000 to start. The project will be probably $1 million or more once we get into the actual construction of it, when we get the plans done, and that would be something we'd come to in about a year for the construction, just design money this year. So I want to bring that forward and see if there's any discussion or public comments on this item.
Madam Mayor?
Are there any hold on. Are there any comments? Councilman Petros?
Dave, is there some reason why this doesn't include any M2 or ATP grant funding?
Yes and no. To get started, we'll probably need to do some concepts and develop some so we can apply for it. Active transportation money, we screen that out. We're not sure it's going to apply real well to this. We are going to apply for some other projects. This could be one, but Mark Vukovic next to me, our Deputy Director City Engineer, actually did a screening of that, and I'm not sure it's really going to apply. So we want to start the concept. We need to get out to the community and have a talk about this. And I will advise you, there's one element we think that would probably work well here, and we're looking at a roundabout on this street. It would fit very well in this, and we think we'd like to explore that possibility. It would help slow down the traffic, reduce some of the accidents, and beautify the street. So that's one element we're looking in with some other modifications.
Councilman Curry.
Thank you. Yeah, I will just say this is one of the most unexpectedly unsafe stretches of highway in the city because of speed, because of the curvature of the road, because of the morning sunlight coming out that blinds people. I can think of at least 4 major accidents that have happened here just in the time that I've been on the city council. So I think this needs to be a very major safety priority moving forward in the year ahead. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilman Piotr.
Dave, your goal is safety, not just necessarily slow it down, and we want to keep throughput on there. We're not trying to keep people off the road, I presume.
That's correct. We're looking at safety, turning it into more of a multimodal. We also have a very high bike contingent crowd that goes down here, that goes to the Sharrows going down further. So safety is the primary function on this.
So this ends up becoming a bicycle bypass for this section of PCH then?
It serves as it now. They come off Bayside Drive coming out of Back Bay Drive, and they cross the PCH there, and they go down Bayside Drive on their way to either going into Corona Del Mar or turning and going onto Balboa Island across the peninsula. So there's a lot of bike traffic. It is a good bypass from the road bikes that like to use on Coast Highway. They will turn off there. It's a slower street going on the Sharrows on Bayside Drive all the way to Marguerite, then they get back on the highway that direction.
So what intersection are you looking at the roundabout for?
It would probably be Harbor Drive right there. It's a very wide entry. If you know that area, it's kind of a triangle section. We've got a residential street there that dead ends. We've got an intersection. That's right at the curve, too. And as Councilmember Curry mentioned, we've had some accidents on here, and part of it is speeding. I'm not sure why it's a test track. It's a beautiful place to maybe take your Ferrari on a test drive around. But that would surely slow things down and get your attention before you come in and out of that curve.
I just aim for the big yellow truck parked on the side of the road there. The mayor's truck is usually parked there. All right, thank you.
We could look at that, too.
I better check that out. Other comments from the council? Mr. Wu.
I have a question about the roundabout part. My part of town.
Could you stand up?
Jack, you have to come up to
the microphone.
Unfortunately,
please.
the microphone. Otherwise, people at home can't hear you.
I have a question about the roundabout part. If you're thinking about that as design, are there any places in the city that you've done that and it hasn't worked?
There are cases where they tried that, but they haven't built true roundabouts. We have 2 cases, but there are several places. In fact, if you go out to Ladera Ranch, that's an integral design element that works very well to arterials out there. We have some others down in La Jolla. There are others around the county that are very successful. So the city's never really taken on a full roundabout. Our last experience was up in Santa Ana Heights. We kind of did a temporary thing, but we kept the stop signs in, which is not typical on a roundabout. Europe's very big on these. A lot of other areas in the state are starting to do this. So we think it's a good candidate. We want to look at that as part of a solution.
Because that's my main concern, because I do live up that part of town in Santa Ana Heights where that roundabout was put in, created a ton of confusion, and then it was pulled out.
Right.
So I would like a lot of consideration on that one before you guys put something like that in, spend the money in the design phase even, and then pull it right out when you have all the neighbors in the area complaining about it.
Yeah, we would.
Why did you pull out the one in Santa Ana?
It turned out that it wasn't really effective because when council directed us to put that in there, also directed us to keep the stop signs in, and roundabouts don't have stop signs. We had confusion why you're stopping going in a roundabout. And it really was put in as a temporary basis. It wasn't fully designed. The curbs weren't in, the landscaping that functions well with the roundabout. So call it a trial, but we were looking at something different on that. And we'll look, when we get into that, we'll get some examples and bring that forward.
Thank you.
Jack, I have a quick comment. Jack, what I heard, maybe you already said this, but apparently there's a reason why we couldn't put a signal there because of something is, you can't, in other words, a roundabout, you'd ask, why would you do that, not a signal? I would, because when I come out of Harbor onto Bayside, I'm always wondering, am I going to make it? And, did I go too quick, too early, too late? So a signal, can you explain why we couldn't have a signal there versus, is that the problem? Is that the issue?
Yeah, a signal's an option. We haven't really looked at a signal, but first you have to meet warrants on a signal. The other thing about a signal is it's probably going to rest in green on Bayside, which means people are still going to speed through there because it's going to be red on the side streets.
Yeah, that's right.
The other part about a signal, you're looking at about $220,000 to build a signal and about $10,000 every month to run the thing, basically. So.
Any more questions? Councilman Curry? No? I had a question, kind of follow up. So if it's not a stoplight, I could see why that wouldn't work. And a stop sign? I mean, we typically in a roundabout, you have four roads coming together. So is there a fourth road coming from the apartments or condos or?
There is a road there. It's a 4-way, but it's not really set up for a stop sign.
Right.
The other thing about stop signs, they need to meet warrants too, and you don't normally put a stop sign on arterials. Just for the fact that if it doesn't meet warrants, you'll find, and I probably get my council member next to you to talk about that. I'm not a traffic engineer. I know a lot about it, but not enough. But when you put in stop signs without warrants, what you have is a lot of accidents because people aren't familiar. They run through it, and they have a lot of side and head-end collisions.
Well, I kind of see the same thing happening with a traffic circle, but there are other experts here. It just is kind of surprising to me. But we'll see what happens in your design phase.
Yeah, and let it known that we haven't inked in a traffic circle. It's just an option. We'll look at a signal again. We'll look at a traffic circle. We're just thinking what would fit, and that happened to fit the box on that. So we want to look at it a little better. We haven't even got ink to paper on a lot of this stuff yet. So as we start the design, we'll bring it back. First, we'll probably work with the community and see what you think, because there's a lot of folks in there, and then it'll come through council.
All right, very good. Any other comments, questions? Okay, should we move on? Bring the mayor back? Oh, did the public want to comment? Thank you. I'm sorry, Jim.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Dixon and members of the council. I just had a question about the format of the presentation. I applaud the staff for making available the presentation in advance and peeking ahead. I see there's going to be a list of 20 projects asking the council for priorities, red, yellow, green. But it's preceded by this, which is taken out of all these pages before it. There's like 50 different projects here, and I'm just wondering what is the distinction between the projects that are in this group in the various categories and the ones that will be coming up on the list of 20. Why are some of them in these categories and some of them on the other list? Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, I apologize for that. We changed the format just at the last minute because of some conflicts, and the city attorney advised us due to recusals. So the PowerPoint that you're seeing right here has 2 slides that have been pulled out of order. They are in the PowerPoint. I just moved them up. So this one and the next slide, you're going to see again. But I put a shaded amount on it because we have more to discuss on that slide later.
So we don't need to do public comments in the middle here. We're just Or what do you?
I think we have to comment, as if the city attorney would advise me, I think on each one of these items you want to go ahead and take public comments specifically on it, and then we can go through the whole presentation you like and
Okay.
take comments however you like.
Okay, and so Councilmember Duffy, I guess.
I am going to recuse myself
And
on
then
the
you-
next item
And the mayor's coming in right now. Yes.
because I have a business on that.
Okay. Very good. Welcome back.
Thank you. Okay, Mariners Mile.
Thank you. So this project, again, shows up later in your PowerPoint. This is an area that we just want to kind of bring to your attention. We've started this project. We've started various items. This was an area that was kind of requested by the residents to deal with traffic congestion. We had the businesses in the area want to look at the redevelopment area and look at how Mariners Mile might be reconfigured, and also the land development area around there to foster redevelopment. Just so you know, we're currently, and we mentioned this before, we're working with OCTA to do a regional study on Coast Highway from Seal Beach all the way down to Dana Point, actually San Clemente. So we're in that process, which will cover some of this. As you know, too, also back in October 2014, we did a design charrette just on Mariners Mile. So we have some information out of that. Haven't invested a lot yet. There's $300,000 currently in this year's budget to start the design and some concepts and work with the community on that. So we wanted to bring that to your attention. Part of the discussion on this one, as you'll see with a lot of the items, as Mr. Mosier pointed out, I would get to on a larger discussion, the ones at the end need a little more specific guidance from council. Council made some concerns that we have a lot of big projects and they want to kind of relook at them. This could turn into something big. Now, from a funding standpoint, and I'll go to the next slide to kind of show you. This is the design charrette that we talked about. From a funding standpoint, we're not sure how this is going to be funded. A lot of it might be through Measure M grants. It could be other things. It could be partnerships with the developers and things to and how to enhance the area. So I haven't got the dollars figured out yet, but that's kind of the project I want to bring to your attention. One of the items that you asked for last time at your January goal setting was some suggestions on how to defer or reduce costs. So you'll see later on when we get into the various projects, we provided slides like this. And in this case, we suggested maybe we just pursue grants and go down Mariners Mile as a pay-as-you-go and use general fund mainly to match grants. That's where the highway money might come in. You could defer the start of this project, and if you feel there's just too much money or we want to go slow in this, we could defer it. We could explore private-public partnerships maybe when we get into the concept we actually develop, and maybe there's a way to bring some private money into the development of it. You see there on the charrette, that's kind of what they came up with, and we can talk. There's some good things out of that, and there's some things that staff isn't so excited and the community isn't so excited about. So we need to have some more discussion on that. So we're looking for your input on Mariners Mile.
Councilmember Petros.
Yeah, Dave, I'm wondering what precisely are we asking for here? We already have an investment in the OCTA study. We have a set aside with our that consultant already to do some focus work for us here. Our community development staff is engaged in some land use planning issues, and that can come forward through the regular budgetary process. Why are we calling this out specifically outside of what we've already made commitments for?
The goal that we thought, and again, I wanted maybe when Councilmember Duffy gets back, there are several projects in here. We just want to make sure we have reaffirming actions by council or direction, because we have 4 new council members who had some concerns about financing big projects. So we wanted to let you know projects that are in motion, projects that are coming up, and things that you have significant investment or time in. In this case, we don't see a lot of financial general fund denomination going in here, probably going to be investments, but there is some time. We're going to have community development staff. We're going to have to hire some consultants. Again, there's just $300,000 currently in this budget to get going on this project. So this project particularly is just, do you want to keep going on it? What do you think? That's kind of the gist on Mariners Mile.
I would support continued diligence in the track that we've set. I don't think that to continue that, though, would require any additional budgetary amounts to continue with the OCTA study, to engage our staff in the discussion on the land use, and go as we're doing. So I think, Mayor Selich, I would say we're already on track. It has very little impact on the budget right now, And this is something that if staff is looking for direction on where the council is on this, that's something separate and distinct from its effect on our budget.
Can you tell us what the deliverable is on the $300,000 of deliverables? What are we getting for that?
I don't think we've completely defined it. Our original budget was to we have HDR currently on board to draw up some channelization maps to kind of see what lane configurations might work, and we're looking at that. There may be some planning studies that we'll work with community development on to see, like for instance, the charrette going to the next level and say, how would we basically parcelize this up? Should we change the planning and land use on it? Could be some parking studies. Hasn't been completely defined on that yet.
Okay. Councilmember Piotr.
Yeah, just follow up, Mr. Mayor. So I would love to see a detailed presentation of this before we spend a lot of design money on it. Is that part of the plan?
It could be. It started, and again, I apologize because this got taken out of order. There's a whole discussion back here, but in this particular case, we have a significant effort started already, as Councilmember Petros said. We're rolling down a road. We just want to make sure council is aware of that because there are resources, both staff time and money that'll go into this. We've met on the charrette. We promised the business owners we'd come back at some point and start talking about channelization, land use, and things like that. So there's a commitment there. And if you want to keep going down that road, which we can do that, that's perfect. But we haven't got a presentation yet to the point where we've something ready for council other than the charrette. I think our next step would probably meet with the business owners and the community, unless you want to bring it back to council and say, this is what we think we should do with Mariners Mile.
Yeah, I'm very interested in bringing it back to council. I sat through the design charrette. I saw some of the final work product. I do like what Councilmember Petros is saying as far as working with OCTA and making sure our Measure M funds and working with all the coastal cities and maximizing our PCH throughput and thoroughfare. It's just when you get into the actual design concept, the charrette is totally changing the way Mariners Mile functions. And I don't know that that's a decision that the council's made yet. That's the part that I'd like to bring back before you get too far down the road where we're committed to that design. Thanks.
Councilmember Curry.
Well, I share Mr. Petros's concerns. I don't know whether I'm for this or not because it's not been adequately designed to the point to where we know what it's going to cost and what it's going to do, nor have we really worked it through with the neighbors. And so I think to Mr. Piotr's question, I mean, we need to do some of this design work to answer those questions, to know what this is going to look like, to decide whether we should move forward with it or not, because otherwise we're just sort of shooting in the dark and, you know, it's like walking around with a kick me sign and I keep being asked, do you want us to keep doing this, want us to keep doing this? Nobody knows what you're doing and what it's going to look like when it's finished. But I do know that the businesses in this neighborhood are very concerned about throughput and traffic. That we've been working on it for a long time, that the solutions are complicated, and I think we should keep working on it, and then bring us back something that we can make a decision on that's ripe for decision making.
Mr. Wu.
I wanted to back this up a little bit. And ask this to Mr. Harp. I actually sit on the OCTA's M2 Oversight, Taxpayer Oversight Committee, including being chairman for the Annual Eligibility Review Committee as well. Is this something that I'm able to participate in if we're discussing Measure M2 money?
Yeah, I don't think we had a discussion about that, but it probably makes sense till we analyze it for you to go ahead and recuse yourself from this, but we didn't have a discussion.
I know, that's sitting here and realizing that if you're talking about Measure M2 money.
Yeah, it's probably safe for you just to recuse yourself from this item and maybe join Councilmember Duffield in the.
On every one of the items that deal with Measure M2 money?
There's a lot of them.
Should I just leave the meeting?
Are you trying to get out of here?
I think it's
I have tax returns to do. I'll sit back there.
And I apologize, council. This item bringing forward was not intended to say we're not moving forward. We have money. We're proceeding with it. It was a reaffirmation. As we get into the 20 projects we talked about on January, some of those are already funded, like Big Canyon we'll talk about, and we're moving forward, but there are significant things that'll come. So we just basically asked them the question, because we have some new council members, how would you like to move forward? We have all intention to keep moving forward with Mariners Mile, unless you choose at this point to say we have so many things on our plate, maybe we ought to hold off, maybe we ought to rescope. I don't think I'm hearing that. That was the point of this slide.
Well, Dave, let me give my colleagues a little bit of color on this and to maybe jog your memory. For at least the past 2 years that I've been on this council and years prior to that, I've attended numerous meetings of the Mariners Mile Business Association who have repeatedly stung me for the fact that we, the city, are allowing, in their mind, allowing this area to turn to blight. They would like to see this entire area revitalized. As you properly suggested, the residents up on the hill and at Bay Shores and around the area believe that throughput is an issue and congestion continues to rise there. So this is not something that is brand new. It is something that, in fact, has had at least the 2 years that I'm aware of planning going on to it. If anybody up here would like to suggest that we slow down, I would love for you to join me at one of those Mariner Mile Business Association meetings and you be the one to deliver that message. But again, I believe that we have already momentum by virtue of all that work before. And no, we don't have a design here. It's not ripe for design yet. It is simply the question, are we interested in continuing down a path to get to the point where we can ask the questions about a design? This is just,
That's what the question is. Just this particular project, we are already moving down the road. Are you reaffirming we're moving forward with it because there will be time and resources coming up? I'm hearing yes on that, but it was on our list to check.
Yes.
Councilmember Muldoon.
Oh, yeah. I think, if anything, we could speed it up. Awful traffic problem. One thing that I think the most important function we do is improve standard of living. So from property values to not pulling your hair out in traffic. So that's how I feel.
Okay, well, I think you got your direction on that one. Well, any public comments on this section? Okay, seeing none, Aaron, you can bring back our recusers. And we'll move on to the rest of the presentation now, uninterrupted. So, Dave?
And again, let me summarize as soon as Councilmember Duffy. We, on the CIP in our January goal session, we talked a lot about how projects are funded, how they're generated, how you get these projects. To give you some background on what we're going to talk about tonight, there's been a commitment by the council, and you see this graph in front of you that talks about the general fund commitment. We put a lot of money into the capital improvement program every year. Some is a gas tax, Measure M2, could be water funds, sewer funds, development fees. And one of the commitments, too, from council is to put in about $5 million a year in general fund, which supplements those improvements. We use that money to offset the capital repairs and replacement. This is our sidewalks, our alleys, our street lights, all the infrastructure that we have. So we also use that general fund money as providing a source of match we talked about for other grants. So I'm going to move into the two areas we're going to talk about tonight. What you're going to see is a lot of categories, and I'll go through each one of these and where the projects lie in those. First assumption is all the projects that are currently in our CIP are being moved forward. We're only really talking about new projects and significant rebudgets. If there's projects in our current capital program, which we have tonight, those are going to continue to work on, and we'll move forward with those through the year. So under the facility side, and what we're looking at for new projects and programs, I've got the Corona Del Mar station, the fire station and library projects, our first one. This is currently in our budget right now. We're looking to add a little more money to it. We think that costs on the construction side will be a little higher, so we're asking to add $751,000 out of the facility finance plan into this project. So we'll be looking to put that in the budget coming towards you. The next project on here is Fire Station 2, which is in Lido on 32nd Street there. We only had enough money for design in the budget currently. We had $250,000. We think we're going to need about $350,000, and we haven't started the design yet. So we're looking to add another $100,000 in that. Again, this will be the facility finance plan funding. Every year we do capital major maintenance on our facilities. This is an annual request, and we put about $1.5 million in. Last year we started this program where we're doing significant HVAC repairs. We're doing painting of 9 buildings, I believe, recarpeting various items, including this police station. That's where this funding will go to. Next year we'll take on another level of tasks through our 72 facilities. Of that 1.5 million, this is 1.2 million we haven't identified yet. The last two projects on this page are part of that 1.5 that we've actually identified as needs. So the total combined is the 1.5 million. And the two needs we have are replacement of the lighting in the central library and control switches. They're about 20 years old. We need to replace those. and also refurbishing both the Central Library restroom, which is a major refurbishment by the Friends Room, and also the Mariners Library, which needs a smaller refurbishment. And the last thing under our facilities is we'll be tackling the Mariners Fire Station. We need to replace the apparatus bay. With the purchase of some of our new equipment, the apparatus bay is very low there, and we need to basically build a new bay that's higher so the equipment can go in properly. And we'll be taking that on this year. That's a design and construction money, the $1.1 million there. And maybe, Mayor, would you prefer to have questions as we go, or do you want to go through the whole?
Well, let's just do them a slide at a time here and see if there's any questions. I think keep people refreshed. Any questions on this slide? I just have one. So if we do the apparatus bay replacement, what's the useful life of that fire station from that point on?
I don't know the entire, it's an older station, but the living quarters were rehabbed several years ago, so they're in good shape and should last some time. The apparatus bay itself, you probably get a 50-year life out of that.
What do we have in the facilities financing plan for that one? It slips my mind as where it stands.
I can look that up. We have it and get back to you. I don't know if you got that one.
You remember, Councilman Curry?
I don't know, but I think it's fully funded. The full replacement's funded.
Okay, well, I'm just wondering how much life we're going to get out of the 1.1 million before we're going to tear it down and rebuild it.
The good news is it'll be kind of a bolt-on is the way we're planning it. So if you wanted to later on redo the living quarters, you could just leave the apparatus bay and connect the new living quarters to it. So.
Okay. All right, I'll take that for now.
We'll get you a date too. Mark's looking that up right now.
Okay, go ahead and move on. Question?
On the Lido Fire Station, are we ready for design? Do we know what we're doing, where it's going to be, and have we resolved some of those issues?
Yeah, and I have a full slide on that later. We'll go into the details if you like on that particular one. There is some right-of-way issues and some decisions we need on that one.
Okay.
So our next category is streets and drainage.
Go ahead.
Oh, just to make the point that I'm glad that we're moving forward on the Corona Del Mar Library and Fire Station. That's an important project for Corona Del Mar. Councilmember Gardner was a strong supporter of that through the course of the years, and it's ready to go, and it's important to the neighborhood, and I look forward to us moving forward on that.
So our next category is streets and drainage, and we've talked about the first one there, so we're not going to go through Bayside. We had a discussion on this just recently. This is 15th Street Balboa reconstruction, and you saw this at your study session recently. This will be the program funding for that, and it's a combination of general fund and gas tax that we'll be building. This is about a $4 million project. We're looking to rebudget about $172,000. And I'll note today these numbers in the presentation are approximate. They constantly change on this program. The thing you'll find with the capital improvement program, unlike an operating budget, is it flows over fiscal years. So you're going to see things multiple years. We're constantly working on these and drawing off these. So I might give a number today that someone will try to hold me to, and it'll be gone in 2 months because we've encumbered money against a design contract or something. So just a caveat on that. The next project after that is our residential street overlay project. This is a pretty significant project that we've started on, and we got into the design of this. And this has to do with Cameo Shores and a street Dorchester up on Cameo Highlands. Cameo Shores, the track is an older track, and the residential streets have just basically worn out. If you go in there, we have a lot of problems with that. Every time they build a new house and they bring equipment in, we lose the street. We've repaired patches of it several times due to just development. So we're looking to basically replace those streets in there. That's a very expensive cost. We're looking for an economical way to do it. We're looking about our residential project this year to be about $3.1 million. So we're asking to add $1.9 million to the existing $1.1 million budgeted, and that'll basically be our Measure M turnback fees. You call the fair share fees that we use for any general street maintenance. Another project we're looking to doing is our Irvine Avenue pavement rehab. This is from Santiago to Monte Vista. That's basically through the S-curves up there. We need to rehab that pavement. It's been going. The county did a project just recently up by University. Now we're going to join that. In this case, we're going to have to put another $730,000 roughly in there. The funds on this project will be general fund and gas tax. The project right now is about a $1.5 million project just to do the paving. Now, the question I might have for council here is we originally thought we might do the landscape medians in there. There's turf in there right now. We had a discussion about taking the turf out, replacing them. There's some old concrete, not Bowmanite, but it's just straight concrete in those medians. It's going to be about another $700,000 to do the landscaping with the project. So we don't have the money in the $5 million or in our program funds right now. It's just a note for you guys to think if that's very important, we need to find $700,000 or move something else around to do the medians with it. We have been doing that, as you know, over the multiple years as we do a street. I like to do a complete street, take care of the signs and lights, and because we have some old infrastructure, we're doing that on Dover Drive coming up right now and other roads. So you may want to do the landscaping, but then again, it's grass and it'll hold up. We could just keep it if you want it. Just a note on this project. Also, 32nd Street and Newport Boulevard modifications in there. You've seen this recently. We did some right-of-way takes. In fact, I'm going to bring back a reconfiguration of our parking lot there at your next meeting. But we're going to need a little additional Measure M2 money, our fair share turnback. We're going to need about $680,000 added to this project to finish the construction portion of it. And then the last one on this list is the Ocean Boulevard Poppy Avenue pavement replacement. If you've been out to Corona Del Mar, we're in phase 1 right now. We're doing Marguerite and part of Ocean Boulevard down towards the State Beach there. This is phase 2. This basically takes Ocean Boulevard from Poppy down to Marguerite and also Ocean Boulevard from about Fernleaf over to Carnation. And this includes Poppy from Ocean up to Corona or PCH. That would be all that concrete replacement that would happen next year. So we're looking to add about $253,000 to this project. Again, existing in the budget, we have a rebudget of $2.1 million. This would be enough to hopefully do the project in the following year.
Any questions on this slide? I have one quick question. On the Cameo Shores, is that Cameo Shores Road and Dorchester, those are the only 2 streets? Is there more streets?
It's the entire Cameo Shores, lower Cameo Shores, all the residential streets.
Every street in there?
Every street in there.
Okay.
And then up on Dorchester, it's just Dorchester, possibly.
Okay.
We are, by the way, working with the community on that. We reached out to the HOA. It's going to be a big project. We're trying to figure out the best way to do that with the least disruption.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any Finance Committee members want to weigh in? Seeing none, go ahead to the next slide.
More streets and drainage for you. Old Newport Boulevard and PCH, this is the modification where we're trying to add the 3rd lane on Coast Highway under the bridge going westbound and also add the bike lane on it. This would be for the right-of-way portion of it. We have some right-of-way purchases we need to possibly make in there as we go through the design right now. So we're looking to put $1 million in the budget. This would be Measure M2 and also probably our transportation circulation funds, or you may refer them to as traffic impact fees. We have a fee that does that. MacArthur Boulevard pavement rehabilitation. This is basically putting a new pavement coating on MacArthur Boulevard from Coast Highway all the way up to Ford Road. We were successful in getting a grant this year for $1 million on this. We had a 2-phase project we're combining, so we're going to need to add $1.4 million out of Measure M2 to basically be the match for that. The contributions is the $1 million that we got out of the grant. We also want to do a couple streetlight projects. We've been doing these over multiple years now. One, because we have an aging streetlight system. And if you're not aware, we're a unique city that we actually own our streetlight system, which actually is a very big benefit. We don't pay the big Edison rates and have a lot more control in that. But it is aging, and we've been working up in the Mariners area for a long time. Now we're looking at 2 streetlight projects basically tied into other projects. This would be probably Balboa down by 15th Street and also Cameo. And the thought is if we're going to go in and rebuild those streets, and in the case for Balboa, we just talked about 15th Street, rebuild the median islands, we want to check the conduits, we want to make sure the boxes are right, and the old conductors might be needing replacement, and probably put the LED lights on at the same time. So we're looking for $360,000. That'd be pure general fund to do that project. A project come up from our municipal operations department is the reviewing and videotaping of our storm drain system. This is something that we haven't done to videotape our whole storm drain system. And what we're looking for is the reliability and problems that might come up with the storm drains. We've had a couple problems over the years. If you can recall, we've had some corrugated metal pipes that have basically collapsed. We've had some rust out. We had one where in the back of a yard we had a sinkhole. We've had a couple things in that. We're worried about, we have these pieces in our system, but we can't really identify where they're at. There are places up towards old Santa Ana Heights and things where it was probably very common back in the 20s to put a piece of corrugated metal pipe in as a storm drain, but it's now been buried and been there a long time, and we just want to make sure they're in good shape. Once we video it, then we can identify the problems and get in there and do some relinings and things like that. And lastly, we have a citywide concrete and pavement program. We do about $500,000 every year into our concrete and pavement, usually connected with our slurry program. So that's street and drainage.
That's Mayor Petros.
Yeah, Mayor Selich. On the first one, Dave, PCH and Old Newport, there was some consideration early on that there might be a right-of-way swap. Is that still part of a design concept, or is that now gone away given new designs here?
It's still in the view, and maybe Mark, you want to talk to that because he's been leading that effort.
Yes, we've been carrying two alternatives forward right now in the environmental analysis. One does include a right-of-way swap, and the other one also includes right-of-way acquisition. Unfortunately, both of those do have a right-of-way cost.
So it's not so much that we might be paying out $1 million this year, but we could recover that in a subsequent year in a purchase sale.
It's possible. It also may cost more. And we are also looking at grant applications right now through the Highway Safety Improvement Program and ATP to see if we can fit in a project here for this location.
And again, I caution we don't talk too much about right away. We get into an inverse condemnation, but the generalistics, yes, there is something.
Okay, any other questions on this slide? Okay, Finance Committee. Okay, next slide.
So our transportation area, and actually it's rather small this year. If you've been with us for many years, we've been doing signal modernization and putting in fiber optics. I'm happy to report that we're basically getting to the end of that. In fact, phase 8 is our last phase off San Miguel, and we're going to be doing the construction this August of that into February. So we'll have basically most of our backbone fiber and signals upgraded. This year, though, we're looking at a couple projects. The first one I'll talk about a little bit later. It's one of your major discussion points, but it's the Corona del Mar bypass. And we're looking, we might need $50,000 in here, maybe using transportation, circulation money, to do studies or modelings or something, depending on what council wants to do with that project. The other thing is we're looking at the TCA to do something, and Councilman Piotr and I were at their TCA meeting, and they were talking about the projects they wanted to do, and we suggested, and I think that basically the entire board said it's a good idea to model that area and do some TCA money into modeling, because they have some known problems on the toll road in the 73 right in that area for future congestion. So we might get some money for them to help out. That won't be in our budget, it'll be in their budget, but we'll surely keep you abreast. Every year we do traffic signal rehabilitation. We're doing about $200,000. That gets us probably to 2-3 signals to basically do wires, heads, push buttons, things that wear out. And then the last thing on here is we're proposing this year to start the development of the Coyote Canyon Bike Trail. And this was something that was identified in our master plan of bicycles. It's basically somehow connecting, and there's an actual road that goes through the Coyote Canyon landfill down from the port streets up towards Newport Coast, maybe up towards Newport Community Center there. We think there's a good off-street trail that would take the bikers off Newport Coast and around. So we'd like to kind of develop that concept, and we put in $40,000 for that project.
Okay, questions? Finance Committee? Okay, next slide.
So then we get into our water quality and environmental area, and we've got a few projects we're pursuing in here. The first project we've been pursuing for some time is the dredging of the slough. This is $500,000. And again, I'll caution, some of these are in the later projects we're going to talk in more detail about, but we have these funded. We're just, because we're kicking off a big expense, we want to make sure we're all on the same page of keep going with it, et cetera, if you want to slow it down or something. In this case, we're looking at about a $1.5 million project, of which we spent a couple $100,000. Now we're doing the design of the dredging project, trying to figure that out. But we're going to need to put about another $500,000 of Tidelands money into this project to do the dredging next year. Project after that is Bayview Heights Drainage. This is a project we talked about recently at the council chambers. This is basically a grant-funded project, not a lot. It's $455,000 total, but this $50,000 is the additional general fund we agreed to do to pay for a larger portion of the construction with the 2 resident homes that we have to build through there. So we're putting a little more match in by the city. And then the last project in here is the Arches Drainage Project, and this is really a targeted project to address a long-term bacteria closure we have right down where Coast Highway and Old Newport Boulevard come together. There's a big drain that comes out there by the Arches. We are trying to address why we have a bacteria problem and solve that. We think we've got some good leads in that. We're studying right now where the bacteria is coming from and where the hot spots are. So this is mainly grant funded. There's a little money here from Tidelands, $270,000 out of the total amount of 1.16. So that's water quality.
Questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Piotr?
Dave, explain the Seminole Slough dredging project.
Seminole Slough dredging project, if you like, if I could hold that question at the end, I've got a whole slide on it, and I could go through that if you like.
That's fine.
Okay, Finance Committee, next slide.
So we have a category parks, harbors, and beaches, and we have several projects this year under this category. The first project on there, and again, I have a bigger discussion slide on this, and this will actually be coming back to you next meeting, I believe, your first meeting in April for a study session. So we're looking to put a little more money in the Balboa Island Seawall Rehabilitation Project. This would fund the design effort once we get to the point where we know what we want to design. Back Bay View Park enhancements. We've been doing, this is the park on the corner of Jamboree and Coast Highway. We've been doing some enhancements, making the modifications of the vegetation that's overgrown some areas. This is kind of phase 2 that adds some additional enhancements in the park. We're looking at $300,000 in general fund. This fiscal year here, we did a harbor piers. We did piers for 8 piers and redid the decking and various components of those piers. We want to put in the next phase of this, which would be redoing the gangways and the floats, and we need about $800,000 for that. We had $248,000 left over. We'll rebudget that, and we need to add about $551,000 of Tidelands money to do this project. The next project on here is the Grand Canal dredging. This is actually the construction money to do the dredging. We're underway now getting the designer on board to start the design and the permitting of it. This will take a coastal permit, so it'll take some time. And we want to have the money in the budget that we could jump right in and hopefully get the dredging done, which is pushing some of the material that's fallen in the middle of the canal back up towards the sides of the canal. Next project is a project that's under actually an agreement by the city. This is the American Legion bulkhead wall, and there's some structural problems with this wall. And we have an agreement with them that we're going to basically replace this wall for them because they're a leasee on our property there. And we have to do this within the next 3 or 4 years. So we're going to put the money in here for design and permitting. We have to go through the Coastal Commission and get the wall permitted. And then we'll come back and put construction money in probably next year. Next one here is, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, this has to do with the Newport Pier and the building, and we need to have a little discussion on that. This would be the replacement of the piles and the understructure below the building should we choose to do something, and this would be Tidelands money. East Bluff Park backstop replacement. This is something that our Parks and Recreation folks identified. We have an old backstop out there that needs to be replaced, and this happens once in a while. So we need about $250,000 out of the business excise tax. This is collected for fire stations, libraries, and parks to replace this backstop. And then we had another request out of municipal operations, and you've probably seen this. We have a lot of old parks and walls in there. We have a lot of timber, railroad tie structures in this. You'll see this in Irvine Terrace. You'll see this in CDM Youth Community Center in that park there. You'll see it over in Cliff Park. Some of these old walls are just starting to deteriorate and fall. We need to get in and put some new retaining walls and things in to replace these. Some of the staircases need some work on them. So we have $500,000 again in this project to do that. And the last project on this page is the eelgrass plan implementation and the RGP 54 permit. We currently have an application in going through coastal right now. I think we're going to hear our application on an eelgrass plan and RGP this June. This money, the $75,000, would be to continue to do the surveys we have to do for the eelgrass, both in the shallow water and deep water. We do these every couple years as part of that permit.
Okay, questions? Councilman Pestros?
Yeah, Dave, the American Legion bulkhead, that's on this because it's a city bulkhead?
It's actually a city responsibility.
It is a city responsibility. So if there were other bulkheads or other seawalls in the area that might not necessarily be city property or city responsibility, that would be unusual for us to assist in the replacement costs?
We wouldn't normally build any private walls.
Okay.
And council may not be aware, but the American Legion sits on property owned by the city. They have a lease with the city, and we have certain responsibilities as the leaseholder, and this would be one of those, is to maintain that bulkhead.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Finance Committee? Okay, next slide.
Under our water and wastewater area, we're looking at doing some waterline projects this year. Down in the old City Hall area, we call this Lido Marina Village area, there's a bunch of old cast iron main pipes in there built in the 20s and 30s that need to be replaced. So our water master plan identified this, and we have about $200,000 to address some of these pipes in that area. We also want to undertake a larger project that's been in the water master plan and been talked about for some time. This is the bay crossings that we have. We have several water main bay crossings that cross between, for instance, the mainland by Bay Shores over to Lido Island. We have one on Balboa Island that crosses just south of the ferry over to the peninsula. Down at the tip of the peninsula, there's a 14-inch, I think, that crosses from there over to Corona del Mar and a couple of the little ones. These lines are rather old and need a replacement. It's a large project to do these, so it's going to take probably a year to design this and get the permits, and we have $300,000 requested for this year to do that. And then once we get the design, we understand the magnitude of the number, we'll put the construction money in for the following year. Another waterline project we've talked about for some time is the Park Avenue main replacement. We started this several years ago, and we originally budgeted it and we took it out. This is on Balboa Island. We have a large 12-inch main that crosses through Balboa Island. This is the same main that then crosses over to the peninsula, so it feeds the island and feeds the peninsula also. We've talked about replacing this line because it's due for replacement, but the holdup has been basically the underground district on the island, and they are still going on that, but we thought it might be prudent to start designing this. I think they're starting to get some headway on that. They'll determine what they want to do. And if we have the design on the shelf, we can either go ahead and put it in if we think the underground district's close or not, but we do need to address this line, so we want to get the design done, and it's about $250,000. Another item we've been working on with our municipal operations department, we've put money in this year to finish the irrigation controllers in all our parks. We've been upgrading those to sophisticated irrigation controllers, and this should take care of the remaining of them, as I understand, so $150,000 to replace those. We have a large valve in a box, basically a meter box, up at Big Canyon Reservoir that comes out. It's a very large valve. This is a project that's, the next one here is to replace that valve. It's about $750,000 to design and construct that valve, coming out of the water fund for that. And then we had another $400,000 out of the wastewater fund we were going to use for miscellaneous sewer lining and repairs. We videotaped and have a lot of our lines, locations where we need to do work identified. So in this case, we've probably got a few spot repairs, some sags and some sewer lines that need to be replaced. And we basically do it, we either have to dig it up, but most of the time we use a liner that just goes through the line and renews the pipe. And then the last thing on this page is we put about $150,000 in here for adjusting water valves and manholes. And those are when you see our pavement projects. Anytime we do a pavement overlay or anything like that, we have to raise those valves up to grade. So this covers those.
Okay. Questions? Finance Committee? Next slide.
So that's the bulk of the projects that we think are going to be in the CIP identified by funds, and this is just a good time before we get into the specific list that we had for council on the January meeting. If you want to take a break or ask questions, or we'll just move on.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Okay, move on.
Going forward now, there are no outside funds that will be supporting the funding of the projects you're going to be talking about? Is that how it's organized?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I was going to talk about this earlier, but the list we gave you in January, which is this next slide here, this was a series of projects that the management team looked at and said, we want to just make sure council's aware, particularly we had 4 new council members and a lot of things in motion. Some of you expressed concerns about a lot of money and what's going on with these projects. So some of these, as we've talked about earlier with Mariner's Mile, are projects in motion, and we don't look to stop those unless you see something, you want to slow something down. Some of these are new projects. And some of these are more informational, and we do need some guidance. I'll point those out as we go, and you can think about what you might want to give staff direction on. And first of all, this list that we showed you was in January. It kind of didn't have a real priority. It just kind of said these are the projects. So we heard you at the last council meeting in January to say, what would you like to do with these? And you asked to sort this list by priority, which we've done for you. You also asked to sort this list by projects that might be able to help themselves or bring in outside contributions to help you make some identification. And then you also asked us to suggest ideas and maybe areas where we could reduce costs if necessary. And again, I'm just pointing all this out and looking for your guidance because I think there were some concerns on various projects, not all of them. So if it's okay, I'm going to go right into the sort by priority list, and you have this in your pack, and we give you a handout so you can refer back to this. We tried to sort this basically by priority, what we felt was something we must do, things that we probably should do, and things that you could do. So it's listed that way, and the first 4 projects you see on that list are things that, for instance, the Balboa seawalls, we're going to have to do something there. There's a resolution coming. Tonight we'll talk, I'll give you a little background. There's a study session coming. We're going to, hopefully the Tidelands Committee will make a direction. We'll start designing that. Corona del Mar Fire Station on that, again, I'll just go through that. We have some things that we have to do on that. And it is subjective. This was us thinking forward. Some of these might be a higher priority to you or to the public and maybe need to move up or down. So.
Dave, you also want to note that these are in alpha order, so in the blocks, one is not necessarily higher than the other.
So the next list you have is sorted by contributions. And again, as Mr. Kiff recognized, this is in alphabetical order in 3 categories. We thought of things that we're likely to get money for, things that we're possibly going to get money for, and some that we're pretty sure we're not going to get anything for. So if that helps you in some of your decisions, if you want to pursue projects or move forward with them, I'll take any questions. Maybe not.
Any questions on that slide?
Oh, I just want to clarify. So this, could you please go back to the previous slide? All right. So is this a finite list? Are these all the projects we're talking about today?
This is all I have today, and we are surely welcome to take any suggestions.
No. I just want to get my mind around these. So these are the ranked order in priority,
Correct.
importance to the city to proceed forward.
What you're going to see in the next coming slides are projects ranked in this priority for discussion, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's your priority. It was staff trying to take a stab at it.
I understand, but this is staff's recommendations by
Right, and
priority.
it's also alphabetical by category. There's 3 categories.
Got that.
Yeah, think of it
Yeah.
more by the category. Things we know we must do, things that we think we should do, and then things that we could do.
And they're prioritized, ranked over here, 1, 2, or 3 in those 3 different categories.
That's right.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I think I got your system here.
I'm sorry, we could break it down to 5.
No,
but
no,
try to
that's
keep
fine.
it simple.
All
Mr.
right.
Mayor,
Yeah, Councilman Piotr.
how do you want us to get our priorities to you? Are we supposed to say that today, or do we check this list off on your green, yellow, and red? And
No,
get back to
actually,
you?
we don't want you to do that. We're hoping more that you could express whether or not you think, gosh, I've got additional questions about this project, or here's where I'm leaning about this other project. Because study sessions are about guidance. They're about spending more time on a specific project. So we really kind of want to hear, especially if you're brand new to this, if you're brand new to an issue, like the Balboa Theater, for instance, what you think about it. And we'll come back, we'll take kind of what with the sense of at least 4 of you, and then take that back and reframe it for a decision.
So you'd like direction tonight on these issues?
Today, a sense of, am I comfortable with going forward on something like this, or do I need more information, or this is something I know a lot about and I really don't want to go forward on, so we want to hear those kinds of things.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, are we going to go down these item by item and kind of get a poll, or what?
Well, let's run through all of the slides on the priorities.
And that would be my suggestion. We can go through all the slides, and at the end, I have a summary sheet, and we'll take any comments you want.
Let's do that.
This is really to get a barometer feel where you're at on these projects.
Dave, before you do that, one thing that the Mayor Pro Tem said I want to clarify. Many of these, if not all of them, while they haven't been appropriated, have had funds assigned to them through the facilities finance plan. So it's not we're going to just print money to make this stuff. There has been an assignment, not an appropriation of funds. There is money available.
And it's really good to get a holistic view of all the big things out there, because you may want to say, I really want this project to go forward, but there's limited, how much revenue you can apply right now to it, that we could say, okay, we can slow something else down.
Yeah,
But
let me put an additional pinpoint on that in light of what Mr. Petros said. There are some things in this list that there is no money assigned to, and we need to be clear that there's no money assigned to it, which is why Dave provided some options to either reduce scope or cancel it or move forward in another way. Sorry.
One more question then. Are we working against a total CIP budget number that you're dividing up this finite number that we have to allocate amongst all of these projects?
What we have is typically council, through the city manager, allows us to put $5 million of general fund into the project. And then we also know kind of what the fund balances are in gas tax. We get about $2.7 million a year in gas tax. Unfortunately, that's going to go to about to 2.3 this year because of the drop in the gas prices. And we use that to program the priority projects. And then there's a list of projects that we've been going through that are kind of special, that are not in the budget yet in certain areas, that probably need some additional guidance. And again, not looking for all the decisions today, but some of them are not funded, as Mr. Kiff said. And we need to put that money in there, and that would be above the $5 million you normally give us.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Curry.
Just real quick, Dave, in looking ahead on the sheets here, most of these are projects you just discussed going through the summary sheet, so I
Right.
don't think it's necessary for you to read us all the details on the projects again.
I'll go quick.
Yeah, we're running short on time here if you haven't noticed.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Harp asked for at least 50 minutes with you, so we're down to 9 left. We always can continue this to the next meeting
Yeah,
too, and give you plenty of time.
This is
work
too
on
important to
Yeah.
rush, I think.
Yeah.
We can go through part of it today and hopefully
Okay.
continue the rest.
So
Will
real
this
quick,
be a good time to take a break then, or do you have a natural break if you're not going to have time to go through the rest of this
It might
presentation?
actually be a good time, then we could allow the public to comment.
we'll take a break.
Okay.
Okay, all right, we're gonna stop the presentation here and continue on at another study session. But at this time, we'll take public comments on anything that's been discussed so far. So if you have something to say, come forward.
Mayor Selich and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier, and I would just like to echo the comment that Mayor Pro Tem Dixon made a couple of minutes ago. There was a time before Proposition 13 when it was difficult for city councils to give the green light to projects because they had to find a way to fund them, and the number of green lights they gave determined what the property tax assessment was going to be, at least in theory, in the coming years. So there was some pain associated with giving the green light to the projects because you might not get elected if you funded so much stuff that it was very burdensome to pay for it. Currently, the city kind of magically receives money, so we have a certain amount to deal with that the city council really has very little control over what that revenue is coming to the city. As we just heard, gas taxes, property taxes, you can't really control what those amounts are going to be. And this discussion seems to somehow be predicated on that you have some amount of discretionary money to allot to these various projects. And I think it's really necessary for it to be a rational discussion that you know how much money you have to allot between these various ones and what is the basis for that being the money that you have versus the amount that it's prudent to set aside for a rainy day. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comments? Okay, so staff will continue this on until the next study session and pick up where we left off.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Dixon?
So Dave, if you again could clarify, so when we think about and we look at this material going forward prior to the next study session, are we talking about how to spend or use most effectively $5 million? It could be a little bit more because, as you said, some items, is it possible to give us what number we're dealing with? It could be a little bit more just so we kind of have a framework as we look at these projects, we can know how to set these priorities and how to make sure the funds are available.
I think I can try to do that. Just to summarize too, the first slides you saw are really kind of where we think the $5 million should go. That's the bread and butter, keeping the city rolling, keeping the pavement fresh. The next set of projects, most of them, as you said, some are we have to do and we have money for them. We're just validating that you guys are good with the scope and size of it, or if you think we need to save money. And some are not funded. For instance, an example might be the West Coast Highway medians. We don't have the money programmed yet, and that would be pure general fund. Now, you probably have that in the reserve, and we can talk about that, but it's really your choice whether to use that or not. So.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll now adjourn the joint meeting of the City Council and the Finance Committee, and we'll return to the open meeting of the City Council. And item number 3, public comments.
Mayor Selich, it's probably best to adjourn it to a time certain. So if you want to adjourn it to March 24th at 3:30 p.m., that'd probably be the best way to do it, just to adjourn the joint meeting to that time.
Okay, well, we'll adjourn to a time certain, 3:30 on March 24th?
Yes.
24th. Okay, public comments, item number 3, Madam Clerk.
The city provides a yellow sign-in card to assist in the preparation of the minutes. The completion of the card is not required in order to address the city council. If the optional sign-in card has been completed, it should be placed in the box provided at the podium. The City Council of Newport Beach welcomes and encourages community participation. Public comments are invited on items listed on the agenda and non-agenda items. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes per person to allow everyone to speak. Written comments are encouraged as well. The City Council has the discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items.
Okay, any comments on non-agenda or closed session items? Please come forward.
Mayor Selich and members of the council, my name again is Jim Mosier. I normally comment not very effectively on the closed session, which you will be spending the next 50 minutes on. This afternoon I had something more important that I wanted to bring to your attention. It's been about 4 years since California's open meeting law was amended to require that every city that has a website post the agenda of its meetings on those websites. 2 years ago, now Assembly Speaker Pro Tem Kevin Mullen introduced a bill that would have excused cities who were unable to meet that obligation to post their agenda on the internet if the reason was something beyond their control, such as a power failure, cyber attack, or third-party interference. The bill that he introduced failed, but this last December, Mr. Mullen asked the state attorney general if they would issue an opinion, which is still pending, as to whether a city council can go forward with a meeting that has not been properly noticed. I'm saying this because this city has a website, and for more than 24 of the 72 hours preceding this meeting, as best I know, there was no agenda visible for this meeting, or in fact any other meeting, on our city website. At your last council meeting, there was a very commendable example of self-policing where a planning hearing was postponed until tonight because such a trivial thing as the ad in the newspaper was not the right size. And I'm wondering how the city is dealing, if I am correct, with this issue that the agenda was not posted on the internet, at least from early Sunday morning until about 10 o'clock yesterday morning. I would wonder, first of all, if the council is aware of this. I would wonder if there was some technological reason that the city was unable to put an agenda on the website, if it's true that they're not, and whether you have some opinion as that you're basing proceeding with the meeting tonight without proper notice. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my understanding, and Rob Houston probably can help me out with this, that there was technological difficulties over the weekend, that the server went down, so no emails were able to go through that were sent over the weekend, as well as there may have been some difficulties with the agenda. This is the first I've heard of that, but Rob, do you have a response to that?
Certainly, Rob Houston, in charge of the IT department. And over the weekend, our internet provider, a company called Telepacific, had a problem in their one of their towers that take our signals from their central hub and communicate to the internet. So all the city systems were working, but their system was down. They're supposed to have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week response. They had an inability to get to the through the building up to their tower, and so that made a delay. So our internet connection was down. As Mr. Mosier mentioned, the agenda was posted 72 hours prior on the internet, so there wasn't, the posting was made, but due to circumstances beyond the city's control, the website was down for a period of time. I know we did have our postings at the chambers and at the clerk's office and at the library, and they were not interfered with.
Rob, what was the approximate, when did it go down, do we think?
I don't have the exact times, but it was Sunday, probably a 12-hour gap.
So we would have posted then starting on Thursday. It was available. I sent that out in my insider's guide too. Available Thursday afternoon, evening, Friday, and Saturday. Possibly for 12 hours on Sunday it was not available, and then Monday and today.
Yeah, as far as going forward with the meeting, when there's technological issues, my understanding of the law is that you're still free to go forward with the meeting. We've done the best we can. There was technological difficulties which prohibited it from being posted on the internet, but you know, the hard copies were posted, and so I don't see any issue with going forward with the meeting as the law stands today.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, we'll now adjourn to closed session. Mr. Harp, do you have any announcements on the closed session items?
Yes, I do. The City Council will actually not be meeting today regarding labor negotiations, even though that's posted on the agenda, but they will meet with legal counsel regarding the following litigation matters, including Pacific Shores Properties versus Newport Beach, Newport Coast Recovery versus Newport Beach, Woody's Group, Inc. versus Newport Beach, and the City of Newport Beach versus Banshee. Thank you.